Here is my official Patreon. Please join it because there are many stuffs that I can't share here because of community guidelines. But on my Patreon page, you will get adult Harry stories, Naruto, and Deca 2. Also the quick access for other parts of my story which might take time on YouTube. Also there are many stuffs you will get here. Please consider joining my Patreon. Link in the description.
Hey family, welcome back to my video. Today we will see What if Naruto x Hinata in Bathtub Part 2. Before we start, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to the original author of this story. Your generosity is greatly appreciated. Now enjoy the video. Naruto yawned, as he removed the sheets that were on top of him and shifted his weight to where he was sitting on the side of the bed. Today was the day of the Jounin exams, and it just so happened to be the same day that he had one of those dreams. No, they weren't as horrible as the memories, but they still brought a lot of pain. He's able to hide it from those around him at least, but that won't last long. Naruto stood up and walked out into the hallway, turning and heading towards the living room. He entered it and headed straight for the bathroom. Hey, he may be a super-powered human with abilities unlike any have ever seen, but when he needed to take a piss, he took a piss. Naruto brushed his teeth afterwards and got into the shower. Unlike most shinobi, who would take cold baths to stay alert, Naruto would fuck it and take a nice warm one. Any day could be his last, so he lived each day like it was. After about 10 minutes, Naruto got out of the shower and put on his usual black pants, black shirt with an orange hoodie over it, and sandals. After that, he started going through a checklist to see if he had all of his equipment. He picked up his 3 belts from a coat's rack and attached them to his waist. Why did he use a coat's rack? More convenient for him. He then walked over to the dresser and opened up the bottom drawer. Inside of it were 2 katana, one that Naruto made himself and the other, that he found. The one that Naruto made had an orange sheath with the Uzumaki symbol in the very middle of it. Yellow seals were all over the sheath, they each had at least one line connecting to the Uzumaki symbol on it. This sword was actually the first one that Naruto had made, successfully anyway. Naruto took the katana and strapped it to the left side of his belt. He then looked at the other blade. The thing's sheath was pitch black, seriously it was, and it had a purple cloud design around it. When he found it, the damn thing didn't have a speck of dirt on it. Considering that he found it in a cave, that's a little odd. The thing is, he can't remove the sword from the sheath no matter how hard he tried. He once took it to a blacksmith to see if he could remove it. Funny thing is, as soon as the smith saw the sword, he fainted. When Naruto managed to get the guy conscious again, the smith told him about the sword and why he never thought that he would see something from his class. This class of weapons and other things are known as the Shiranai class. To put it basically, there are things in this world that can't be explained. Some have even appeared multiple times throughout history. The sword in question was one of those objects. There was only one time in history that a person was able to pull the sword from its sheath, and of course the man didn't know what happened to him. Naruto did have a pretty good idea though. From that day on, he's kept the sword with him at all times, making sure that the blade is not removed from its sheath. It was easier said than done, and it didn't help that Naruto was even scared of the weapon. All he could do was keep it with him at all times. Naruto thought back to all the other tricks, abilities, and weapons that he had. He had one other thing that could be labeled as a Shiranai class, one that a teacher of his gave him. Naruto shook his head and put the other katana on the right side of his waist. He then checked through all of the pouches and holders/cases on his belt. He needed to make sure he was fully stocked on everything. After he was done, Naruto did one more thing to prepare for the exam. In the same drawer that he had the katana in, Naruto reached a little above where they were and picked up something. The genjutsu that was around the object dispelled itself while Naruto stared at the now visible red scroll. Naruto sighed, as he put the scroll in on of his spare holders. Better to be safe than sorry, Naruto thought, as he turned his attention towards the door. Slaw, how is Adouch doing? Naruto asked, as the sentinel unit in question appeared on one knee. She is doing fine. The unit replied, as Naruto smirked. So she was giving some of the most deadliest creatures on this continent trouble? She's going to make one hell of a fighter and one hell of a pain in the ass when she gets older. He'd have to make sure to teach her as much as he knows when she's old enough. Of course it would be like releasing a juggernaut on Konoha, but these people needed to lighten up, seriously. That's good, I'm going to be gone for about 3 weeks. So please continue your fine work. Naruto said with a grin, while the unit hesitated for a moment, before nodding. Naruto's face hardened, as he looked down at the unit. Do you remember my other orders? The unit looked up at him and nodded without any hesitation at all. Hi, but when are we supposed to begin? Slaw asked, as Naruto walked by him and out the door, waving off Slaw's question as he went. You'll know when the time comes. Naruto looked at the large tower in amusement. So this was where they were going to have the Jounin exams. The tower was around 5 to 6 stories tall and was around a couple of miles in length. It was located a couple of miles outside of Konoha's walls, and it had that freshly made smell. They probably finished it just before him and the other S arrived. They weren't allowed to enter the building, no, all the people who were taking the test were outside talking to one another or trying to find their teammates. Speaking of which, he needed to find his. So off he went through the crowds, searching for them and anyone else he knew. He was bored, all right, deal with it. The test was actually more of a chance to some than others. It required a team of 3 to be able to participate. Meaning that some Genins would even get the chance to rise in the ranks beyond Chunin. For example, if there were 2 Chunins on a team and 1 Genin, the team itself would be able to take part in the Jounin exams, as long as they have permission from their Jounin instructor. If the Genin of the group were to do enough to impress the instructors of the exam, then they, along with their teammates, could rise to the level of Jounin all at once. It would be awkward for the Genin though, but as long as there's better pay, who's complaining? Naruto continued to walk through the groups of Nin surrounding the tower's front. He could see forehead protectors from every nation: fire, sand, mist, grass, rain, waterfall, and even some that he didn't expect at all: sound, rock, and cloud. Sound because they were a new village that was only started a couple years ago, cloud for the simple fact that there's still a civil war going on between the 2 nations, and rock because he wasn't told at all that they would be participating. One of the rock Nin looked over at Naruto, while he froze in place. The Nin then moved on to look at other people, while Naruto sighed in relief. If the rock Nin had recognized him, he would be so screwed and everything he planned would be in ruins. He just hoped that he could get through this without being recognized by any of the other nations. Naruto! Someone yelled out to him, as Naruto turned to face them. A girl about the same age was running towards Naruto. She was about 5 feet 7 inches and had long black hair that came down to her waist. He was wearing a sleeveless pale green shirt and camouflage pants, you know, the ones that have a mixture of white and black spots all over them. She wore combat boots and had a huge black and white scarf around her neck. She was wearing a sound forehead protector. Behind her stood a boy around the same age as well. He was around 5 feet 4 inches, only because he was squatting, and was wearing a gray robe, along with gray pants. He was wearing sandals and had the same scarf around his neck. His entire face except for one portion near his left eye was covered with bandages, and he had a large fur object sewn on the back of the robe. Actually, from the front it looked like hair, but Naruto knew better. Standing next to him was a boy of unknown age. He had short gray hair that just passed his ears. He was wearing a white jacket with a zipper going down the middle. He was wearing black pants and was wearing combat boots. The boy turned around to look at something for a moment, as the symbol for sound could be seen on the back of his jacket. The boy, oddly enough, had headphones on and was apparently listening to some music. Choose any you want. The boy also wore the same scarf around his neck and had the sound forehead protector. Naruto looked at the girl from sound with a confused expression. "Zaku-kun's not with you?" Naruto asked, as the girl looked at him with an irradiated expression. "What the hell? I've been trying to get you to notice me for the past few minutes and the first thing that comes out of your mouth is, Zaku-kun's not with you, ... The girl replied. "I'm sorry Kin-chan, but it is rare to see you and Dosu-kun without Zaku-kun around," Naruto stated, as Kin just continued to glare at him. "So, who is your new teammate?" Naruto asked, hoping to change the subject and hopefully calm her down. Kin thought for a moment, before sighing and turning around to face the gray-haired boy. "His name is Kochabu, he's the team's replacement while Zaku trains under Otokuchi-sama," Kin stated, as Naruto looked over at Dosu. "So you mean that Dosu wasn't picked?" Naruto asked. He knew full well that Dosu was gunning for that position. Hell, he was hoping to be the next Otokuchi, but that's only possible if you fit certain requirements. Kin just looked over at Dosu, who was busy trying to tell Chabu to turn down his music. He wasn't all that sad really. He's actually been one of the few chosen for the next Sound 5. All he has to do is get to the rank of Jounin and he will be allowed a chance to become one of them. Kin stated, as Naruto looked down at her, then looked back at Dosu. "He's really gotten that powerful?" Naruto asked, as Kin nodded. Naruto thought for a moment, before turning back to Kin. "So we're dose that leave you in all of this? I actually want to become a Jounin instructor. Just a nice simple life of teaching child to be bloody killing machines. I mean it's fun for the whole family after all," Kin stated, as Naruto laughed. Yep, his sarcasm was definitely rubbing off on people. Naruto looked at his wristband, before turning his attention back to Kin. "Well, if you don't mind Kin-chan, I have to use what time is left to find my teammates. It was nice seeing you again," Naruto stated, as Kin just nodded. "See ya." Naruto then turned around and headed in a completely random direction, hoping to find his friends. Kin sighed, as she headed towards her group, while wondering how she was going to break up their little fight. Threatening them with chakra scalpels should work. Shizune was bored, plain and simple. She had arrived an hour before everyone else with her team and was soon regretting it. The other two were just as bored as she was and the only male in the group went off to see if his other sensei was around. Shizune looked at the two that were still around. The first was Hyuga Hanabi, the sister to Hyuga Hinata. She was around 5 feet 5 inches and had longer black hair than her sister. She wore the white jacket of the Hyuga, with the clan symbol on the back. She wore brown pants and sandals. Hanabi also took up her cousin's style of covered one of her legs and arms completely with bandages. She pretty much dressed like a regular Hyuga. The other one was Aburame Okami, the sister of Aburame Shino. She was around 5 feet 6 inches and had long hair that was a mixture of pink and white. She wore a jacket similar to the Aburame's, only hers was sleeveless and a silver color. She did have the same regular brown pants that the rest of the Aburame wore along with the traditional sunglasses. She herself was a Uzumaki, and that was more than a reason to have the three be on the same team. Ever since the incident that happened 8 years ago, the families have been working close together. They were as close as the Yamanakas, Naras, and Akimiki's relations. The Uchihas still worked with the Harunos, while the Inazukas and Sarutobis just tried to stay neutral in all of it. Shizune sighed, as she thought of the third member. He was pretty much the fill-in of the team. They needed 3, so they got 3. The fact that a guy that had no family history in Konoha was on a team of people that were from 3 of the most powerful families in Konoha did not sit well with others. Either that, or he's overlooked, and the only Chunin exam that they were ever in did not help much. At least he would be able to gain some strength by training with them. Well, actually, he didn't train with them, or more importantly, Hanabi and Okami. He just kinda went off towards the nearest tree and meditated. She knew that there were only 4 people in Konoha that knew how he fought, that's including her. She was the one of the last 2 people out of the 4, and it was interesting to watch him train. She could only hope that it would pay off for him. The spurt of youth is in these people. I can feel their power flowing around them. Ji-sensei. Can you feel I dash? Lee stopped yelling, as he looked down at all the kunai that were now sticking out of his jounin vest and the various rips in his pants. A female standing a couple feet away from him smirked. Lee-kun, do us a favor and not draw attention to us. The woman said, as she watched Lee nod slowly. The woman was around 17 years of age and had black hair kept up in buns. She wore a pair of black pants and a red sleeveless shirt, its collar wrapping around her neck like a scarf and a zipper going down the middle of the shirt. She had sandals and black fingerless gloves on. But Tenten-chan, I must inform everyone about the spurt of youth and its burning passion. Lee said, as he pulled the kunai out of his vest. Lee, just shut up already. I think you broke our eardrums, among other things, with that voice of yours, stated a black-haired man who was also around the age of 17. He wore a simple outfit, a white jacket and black pants. The jacket was left open to reveal a muscle shirt underneath it. The man had white bandages around both of his arms. Lee looked up at the man with sad eyes. Niji-san, you are against me too. It doesn't matter, I'll still inform everyone about the spurt of youth. And with that, Lee was running and yelling as much as he could. Attempting, and no doubt failing, to tell everyone in the immediate area. Tenten looked over at Niji. I give him 5 minutes before he comes back. Temari, is something on your mind? Temari just waved of the question, as she turned to face her brother. He was about 5 feet 6 inches and had short red hair. He wore a black shirt and black pants, along with sandals. He had a scarf-looking object crossing through the middle of his shirt, while the most noticeable thing about him was the large gourd on his back. That and the black lines around his eyes. She wasn't exactly wearing anything that was noticeable either. She was around 19 and had her blonde hair tied in 4 ponytails, along with being around 5 feet 7 inches. She wore the top of a light purple-colored kimono, with a large red, since I don't know the name, I'll just say that it's a scarf. Scarf around her waist. She wore sandals and black shorts, think Sakura's, that clung to her like a second skin. Hell, the only thing that was noticeable about her was the huge S-fan on her back. Basically, they needed to expand their wardrobe. The third person of the team pretty much had a reason for the way he looked. Just a plain sand-colored cloak, with bandages around his arms and legs. He had a huge sword on his back too. But that's getting off the subject. I was just thinking about what's going to happen during the test Gara. They change it every year after all. Temari stated, as she looked over at the third member of the group. How do you think they're going to react and they find out what the third member of our group really is? Temari asked, as Gara kept his stoic expression. It depends on the person. Gara stated, as they both heard someone yell at them. Now that was one person that they both could easily tell out of a crowd. Temari turned to face a 15-year-old boy around 5 feet 6 inches running towards them. He wore dark blue baggy pants and had a dark blue hoodie on. He wore sandals and had short brown hair, those why he could be spotted out in a crowd. Rarely anyone had brown hair. The sleeves on his hoodie were a little too long considering that you could only see his fingers, that and his face were pretty much the only parts of his body that you could usually see. He was one of the few people that both Temari and Gara could put up with. That hoodie makes him look fat though. Temari thought, as she scanned over it. She knew better though, since she had seen him without it on. Nothing special, but at least he wasn't fat. The boy just stopped in front of them and smiled. Hello Temari-chan, Gara-kun. The boy said, as Gara nodded while Temari just slightly smiled. Hello Irvine-kun, so you're participating in this exam as well? Temari asked, as Irvine just nodded. Yeah, I kinda have to, or else the others can't become jounin. Which reminds me, where is Kankuro-sensei? I thought that he would be here with you guys. Stated Irvine, as he looked over at the third member. Temari also looked over at the third member of the group. His name is Sabura Omocha. He's the replacement for him while he's absent. Temari stated, as Irvine nodded slightly, before walking over to Sabura and extending his hand. Hi, I'm Liger Irvine. It's nice to meet you. Sabura just looked over at Gara and Temari. Temari nodded, as Sabura shook Irvine's hand. Irvine hesitated for a second, before shaking Sabura's hand and pulling his back. He looked over at Temari and Gara. Well, if you'll excuse me, I need to go meet up with my teammates before the beginning of the test. It was nice seeing you. With that, Irvine headed in the direction of his team's location, as Temari stared at him with a confused expression. Funny, I thought he would at least figure it out. Temari stated, as she felt someone tap her shoulder. Temari turned around to see Sabura holding a note. She took it from him and read it, before laughing her ass off. He was trained by Kankuro after all. Temari thought, as she looked over at her teammates. Both of them showed no emotion, but you could pretty much tell what they were thinking. Temari sighed, as she thought about why the hell she had to be put on the same team as these two. Oh well, at least Irvine was around. So being here wasn't going to be total hell. All of you bastards aren't going to beat us. A 16-year-old man screamed, as he jumped onto one of the nearby tables and pointed towards a very large group of chunins. The man had spiky black hair and stood around 5 feet 8 inches. He wore a large gray jacket and brown pants. The jacket he kept zipped up, and he also wore sandals. His also had 2 red triangles on his cheeks. The large dog that was sitting next to him covered his eyes with his paws, while both Hinata and Shino sighed. I really wish that Kiba-kun would stop doing that. Hinata thought, as she watched several chunin approach him with anger in their eyes. At least it's amusing to watch. Naruto sighed, he couldn't seem to find his teammates anywhere and he knew that if he didn't soon, he was going to be in some serious shit, again. Author, nothing much else, what? Read and review people. A Test of Dreams, author, nothing much really. Section 72, grins, hey, no one complains about pay raises, what can I say? Thanks for the review. John, thank you, and I'm glad that you like the story. Ice Princess 421, strokes chin, I might just be able to bring her in, but not right now. I need to intertwine her into the story, I can't just make her pop up out of thin air. She should be able to show up after the Jounin exams, since I already have that part planned out. The end to the exams isn't going to be for a long time, oh well, it gives me time to develop her personality. Commonless, well, what can I say? She does stop stuttering, after the 8th chapter, but if you're reading this, then you must already know that. YHJ, claps, yeah, you, out of many that have read this story, managed to find that. It's something I like to do in this story. If people were to go back and read over it carefully, they could probably find a few more of those as well. Disclaimer, I do not own Naruto. Enjoy the FIC. A Test of Dreams. Part 1. A group of bushes rustled slightly as Tsuchi-kin stepped into a small clearing. She looked around the R, making sure to check every inch of the place. She needed to know if someone was near, she needed to be alert of the immediate area. She listened closely for any sounds, for anything that could be approach her current position. She checked every small detail to make sure so that she would not be caught off guard. She continued to do this for a few minutes before she was satisfied and sat down. She reached behind her and went through her pouch. Until she finally found what she was looking for. The item in question was a bag of chips. Now most of you must be thinking, what the fuck, at this point, so let me explain. You see, it all starts with how men and women are built. Men have a large, muscular look and women having a small, slim look. This applies to many, but not all people, mostly shinobis. Since they need to stay fit to be able to go through the countless missions that they go through. Though there are some shinobi that need to look frail or large to be able to accomplish their missions, but that's getting of the point. Most females in Kin's village tend to keep a small figure in order to find someone since, to be blunt, the males in the village only see body not mind. So if a female was caught eating junk food, it was frowned upon. Kin only had one thing to say to the people of her village when they caught her eating junk food. If you don't like it, go fuck yourselves. At the time she was extremely hungry and pissed, so it was the only natural answer. Kin didn't give a shit about the village's little moral, she would eat whatever she wanted whenever she wanted. If she chose to wake up in the middle of the night and eat 2 roasted boars, then so be it. Actually, she did do that once, just to inform you. Of course, when her Jounin sensei found out about this, she made a deal with her teammates. If they made sure that Kin was eating healthy food byproducts, then she would give them a set amount of money for every time that they caught her. How she knew this? Her teammates came to her and told her themselves. They always did know what to do when it came to her and her junk food. Besides, if she were to be separated from it, a rain of hell and suffering would fall upon them. Which gave them all the more reason not to look for her. Never separate her and her lunch, speaking of which. Kin frowned, as she looked down at her hand. 1 chip left, 1 misali little chip left, and she had already gone through the other bags. Kin sighed, as she begun bringing the chip towards her mouth. She only had one thing to say about this. The last chip is always the hardest to finish. Just as she was about to eat it, she heard a rustling coming from the bushes. She quickly pulled out a kunai, as she spun around in time to see a large blur pass by her. Actually, it knocked her down. She wondered what the hell had happened, before she took notice of the large, waist-wise, man in front of her. He looked around 16 and had long brown hair. I mean, seriously, the hair was almost as big as the guy himself. He wore a black bodysuit, and a type of rope around his waist, several pouches on the rope. He had a watermelon on his back, it being carried in a net-type bag. The man was hunched over like an animal and was apparently eating something. His back was to her. Kin stood up, as she wondered what it could be that he was eating, until she felt that there was something missing from her hand. Her chip was gone. What the hell? That's my chip you're eating, you jackass. The girl yelled, as the man turned around to face her. He had black armor covering his chest and arms, and a cloth that was hanging down from the rope belt showed the symbol of Konoha. He had red swirls on his cheeks, he was licking his fingers. I always get the last bite. There was an awkward silence between the two, before the man moved all of a sudden. He actually moved, faster than Kin thought someone of his size could, causing her to be caught off guard and fall on her ass when he suddenly appeared in front of her. His face now having a sheepish smile, while he rubbed the back of his head. Sorry about that, it's an old habit that I've been trying to break now. The man said, as he pulled Kin to her feet. Well, actually he lifted her up considering how strong he was. He then begun to wipe the dirt away from her shirt and pants, managing to get all the dirt off without going to any of the more private regions. There you go, and to show that I'm sorry about knocking you down over a chip. The man reached into one of the pouches in his belt and pulled out a large bag of chips. She didn't know how he managed to put a bag that big in something so small, and at this point she really didn't care. The man handed her the bag, while Kin took it eagerly. Sorry again. Kin wasn't paying much attention to him, since she was too busy shoving the bag into her pouch. A frown appeared on her face when she discovered that the damn thing was only able to go halfway in. The man stared at her in confusion until he slapped his forehead. Of course, I forgot to make it to where you could fit the bag in there. Please hand me your pouch, the man said, as Kin hesitated for a moment, before silently handing her pouch to him. The man then sat down, as he pulled out some ink and a brush. He dipped the brush into the ink and began to draw some seals inside her pouch. When he was done, he put away the ink and brush, and handed her bag back to her. "Try it now," the man said, as Kin was able to easily put the bag of chips into her pouch. Kin looked back towards the man. "I increased the amount and size of objects you can carry in the pouch by making it to where any object that enters the bag will be 3 times smaller, until it's taken back out." The man stood up, as he smiled at the sight of Kin drooling over the bag and all the possibilities of storing items. "Well, now that you're able to store the chips, I think I'd be best if I be on my dash dot. Choji." The man's face immediately turned to horror as he recognized the voice that was calling for him. "Choji, where the hell are you?" The man's face switched to panic, as he quickly looked around the area, before looking back at Kin. "Tell her that I'm not here," the man said, as Kin looked at him in confusion. Before she could ask, the man rolled up into a ball and into some bushes. A second later, a very pissed female came through another set of bushes. A woman around the age of 16 stood before Kin. She was about her height and had long blonde hair that was kept in a ponytail, the woman's bangs covering her right eye. She wore a purple shirt only covered her breast and came down to about mid-waist, the shirt itself having a large zipper going down it. She wore a fishnet shirt under it, the shirt covering the rest of her waist and her collarbones, along with her shoulders. She wore bandages around her hands as well. She wore a skirt that was cut at the sides, only covering the front and back. Bandages covered her thighs and apparently everything else underneath the skirt. She wore sandals as well. The girl looked over at Kin, her pissed expression never changing. "Hey, have you seen a large man with brown hair around here?" the woman asked, as Kin pointed in the opposite direction. "Thanks," and with that, the girl headed in that direction. A few minutes later the large man came out of the bushes, smiling sheepishly once again. "Thank you for covering for me. My teammate is in one of those moods again," the man said, as he held out his hand. "I never got to properly introduce myself. I'm Akimichi Choji." Kin reached her hand out and shook Choji's. "I'm Tsuchi Kin, it's nice to meet you," Kin said, as Choji pulled his hand back. "Same here, I would really like to stay here and chat, but my teammate will probably pass back through here. So you'll excuse me." Choji then proceeded to run like hell, in the attempt of putting as much distance between him and his female teammate. Kin just stared in the direction that Choji headed, before heading back towards her team's area. At least now she would be able to eat more chips now. "Man, there's nothing to do," Shizen stated, as she looked over at her 3 students. "And you guys being quiet doesn't help much," she stated, as the 3 looked up at her. Irvine had came back a little while ago, disappointed that he wasn't able to see his other sensei, but it was all good. He did, meet one of the people that helped him run his family's shop. 1010, she thought her name was. That was pretty much his excuse for being late and it worked. "Hey, this wasn't Kakashi we were talking about, I mean that man is horrible when it comes to excuses." The other 2 didn't really seem to mind really. Actually, Hanabi didn't give a shit and Okami just shrugged it off. The 3 were now quiet as hell, all of them just sitting around and waiting for the Jounin exams to start. Hanabi in a meditative sitting position, while Okami, Irvine, and Shizen had their backs up against the same tree. "I mean, come on," Shizen said, as she stood up and looked towards Irvine. "Hey Irvine, let's go find something to do," Shizen said, as she waited for Irvine to respond. "Irvine?" Light snoring could be heard, while Okami looked over at Shizen. "Shizen-sensei, I think Irvine is sleeping," Okami stated, as Shizen looked over at her. A grin slowly started to form on Shizen's face. "Hey, Okami, do you mind waking him up for me? You know." Shizen signaled for Okami to use her family's traits, while Okami just continued to stare at her. "That's not what they're used for," Okami stated, as Shizen pouted a bit. Come on. No. Please. No. But it would be hilarious. No, it wouldn't. You know you want to. No. All well, but you have to admit, he does look cute when he's asleep. Ye dash dot. Okami stopped in mid-sentence, as she turned back to face the direction that she previously was, while Shizun laughed to her heart's content. Hanabi just opened one of her eyes and replied to all this shit in a way befitting her. Idiots. Where the hell is he? Sakura yelled, as Sasuke and Kakashi just stared at her. Sure, they were one of the teams that arrived later than the other teams, but Naruto had yet to show up period. First both her and Sasuke had to wait at the team's training grounds for 3 hours before Kakashi showed up, and now, they had to put up with this bullshit from Naruto. She thought about all the ways she could make him suffer for keeping such a woman waiting. Sasuke raised an eyebrow, as he watched Sakura scheme. Sasuke looked over at Kakashi, who was leaning against a tree and enjoying one of his more interesting books. Sasuke then looked back over Sakura, who was still steaming. What's with her? Sasuke asked all of a sudden, as Kakashi looked towards him. I think she's having her period. Kakashi said, as Sasuke gave a small nod. He looked over at Sakura, who had turned in their direction. What did you say? Sakura demanded, more than asked, as Kakashi waved his hands defensively while Sasuke just sweat dropped. And nothing at all, Sakura. Kakashi stated, as Sakura glared at him, before turning around and fuming some more. Kakashi sighed in relief as his eyes looked over to his right. The words of a genius that I met on the way here, women are too troublesome. Naruto stated, as Sasuke and Sakura looked over at him. Sakura glared at him with such intensity that Naruto slightly shivered. Naruto just stared back at her lazy. Naruto. Sakura said, as Naruto put out his hands defensively. Wait, I can explain. Naruto said, as Sakura froze in place. She was apparently waiting for an answer. Naruto glanced over at Kakashi, who slightly nodded. Naruto sighed, as he turned to face Sakura. I hope this works. I got lost on the road to life. You know, it really was a good thing that Naruto sent out a Bunshin instead of going out to face them, or her. He thought that it was a really good idea when he saw the clone be sent through several trees, as they all fell on him one after another. Ouch. Naruto thought, as he watched the clone poof out of existence. He then teleported towards the group and landed in the tree that Kakashi was leaning back against. Kakashi knew that he was there, that much he figured out, but what about the others? Nope, they seemed to be putting too much attention into the decoy. Honestly, it was like babysitting a bunch of children with superhuman strength. Well, he'd have them trained soon enough. Naruto's body flickered, as he appeared right beside Kakashi, who was having a rather fond time of reading his book. Naruto looked over at his two teammates and sighed. He then looked over at the tower, Kakashi also looking over at it. Bells begun to ring, as all the shinobi in the immediate turned towards the tower. Many teams had come here from all around the world. Some coming from minor villages, while others came from the 6 great villages of the elemental nations. They had come here for one thing and one thing only. They were going to test themselves, physically, mentally, and emotionally to see if they truly were strong enough to accomplish their dreams. Naruto looked at the tower in amusement. Time to have some fun with the rookies. Naruto thought, as the doors to the tower slowly opened. Nothing much else. What? I just wanted to make the little face things. 0.0, they're pretty amusing. Read and review. With limited time, anything is possible. Nothing new. Section 72, yep, it's to be expected since he's Kakashi's nephew. Yes, I too thought it was smart of him to use a shadow clone. Man, I love those things, they make everything easier. Chi-Chi, that was the point. I think that Choji gets too little attention. He is either brought in and screwed over or they make references to him, but never really put him in. That and they never come up with original attacks for him, which is said. Will that happen in this story? Hell no, expect to see him in the future. Ice Princess 421, thank you for being patient. I'm altering her abilities and forming what I want her to be like in my mind right now. Changing a lot of things, but trying to stay with what you originally made for her. Basically, I'm making her into a mixture of your/my version, which will make her an extreme badass, evil laughter. Also, if you don't mind, I'd like to use an experimental type clan jutsu/blood limit on her, it'll be easier to give her a background. Mage Ronin, 0.0, where did you get the name Ronin from? I'm not making fun of it, but it reminds me of a certain series made by a guy called Metro Anime. I won't go into details because underaged people may be reading this. Strokes chin, you know it's hard to say how strong Naruto is, you'll just have to wait until he reaches at least 40 power in order to determine it. Just to tell you, he doesn't use the Kyuubi's power. I always thought that was a cheap way to power, so he doesn't use it anymore. Dragon Noir, yes, the others will have interesting things about them. Hey, everyone can't be filled with angst, what fun would that be? Wait, until you see Gaara's. Snickers, yep, the girls get pissed off easily, but hey, it's more funny, right? As for the plan, I'm afraid that that's too much of a spoiler to tell, hell, that would give so much crap just by telling you the simplest of parts to it. So, you're just going to have to wait and see. The exams I'm trying to be original with, but also stay true to the Chunin exam type thing, you'll just to wait 1 or 2 chapters to see the first part. Disclaimer, I do not own Naruto, enjoy the FIC. With limited time, anything is possible. A large, height-wise, man stepped through the doors of the tower, him smirking at everyone there. He was around 6 feet 1 inch and wore a large black cap on his head. He wore a black leather coat and kept it unzipped to show a black muscle shirt underneath. He also had black pants as well. His face a huge scar going down it, while he just grinned at all the teams. New meat for the grinder. All teams get your asses over here now. The man yelled, as everyone hurried over to the tower. Naruto thought it was pretty funny how some of the people were acting. I mean, it's only a test. If you fall it, you could always take it next year. Once all of the teams were gathered in front of the tower, the man's grin widened. Good, now that everyone's here. I'm Marino Ibiki, you instructor during this exam. I don't have time for your whiny-ass little questions, so let's get straight to the point. Ibiki then pointed towards the tower, as everyone's gaze moved towards it. Inside this tower will be your first test. There are 5 test floors and a mile-long range for each floor. When your team is called, you are to enter the building and reach the top floor without being caught by the other instructors patrolling the tower. At the top you will find an item that you need for the second test, secure it, and head outside the tower. You only have 30 minutes each. Ibiki then pulled out a clipboard and walked away from the tower. Team 7, you're up first. Ibiki yelled, as he pointed towards the group. Naruto just yawned, as he walked towards the entrance, Sakura and Sasuke following behind. Naruto then turned back towards the group, as he lazy stared at them. Once we get inside, leave everything to me. We'll be out in less than 10 minutes. Naruto stated, as the 2 behind him glared at his back. When they reached inside the building, both Sakura and Sasuke started to yell at him, or tried at least. Who the fuck do you think you are, stating something like T-. Sakura was stopped with a swift chop to the neck, Sasuke only took another 15 seconds. Naruto then picked up the bodies and moved them towards a side of the room. Naruto thought for a moment, before he moved them into a position that could give people ideas. Naruto snickered to himself, as he formed a third-rank genjutsu on the 2 and moved up the only stairs in the room. Sakura would thank him later. First test floor. A floor full of nothing but hallways, wow. Naruto said dryly, as he looked at the area's main room. It was a large circular room, having 7 hallways to choose from. Naturally, this would be where the team split up, each member going down one of the 7 hallways 3 at a time until they found the entrance. Well, lucky for Naruto, he had a magical wristband that could scan the floor and show him which hallway was the right one. As Naruto raised his arm and opened the wristband, he stopped to think for a moment, before closing the wristband and grinning. I would be more fun to do this without it. With those thoughts, Naruto thought what the hell and went towards the middle hallway. It didn't take him long to find the first set of guards, 3 to be exact. 2 walking up and down the hallway and 1 standing near the door. The door itself seemed to have a device that would trigger an alarm if it was opened. This was going to be oh so much fun. Now there were 2 options that he could take when going through the building. 1, he quietly moves through the building, making sure not to leave a trace that he was there and cause the entire building to panic, as he just walks out the door. 2, slaughter all that is in his path, leave nothing in his wake. Making sure to leave a few and tell them that if they were too weak and must have more hatred if they were going to get revenge. Then again, he wasn't Itachi. So he went with the first. Naruto jumped upwards and stuck himself to the ceiling with chakra, crawling down it slowly. He knew that if that masked bug freak in tights caught him now, there would be lawsuits, but he needed to think about the test. Naruto then released a small spider and watched it crawl towards the door. Naruto then crawled towards the door and positioned himself right above the man that was guarding the door. Naruto waited for a few seconds, before the spider came back and entered Naruto. He then formed a seal, as a single Kage Bunshin appeared right next to him. Naruto then formed another seal. Manako Itami no Jutsu. Naruto whispered, as he looked directly at the 2 other guards. It took a second before taking effect. Naruto then reached down and in one swift movement, pulled the door guard up, as his Kage Bunshin fell towards the ground and hinged itself to look like the guard. Naruto tied the guard to the ceiling, as the guard himself was out cold. Naruto then fell to the floor and entered the doors. What surprised him was that the stairs to the next room were right behind it. Naruto shrugged, as he ran up the stairs. Second test floor. Interesting, another set of hallways. Of course some of them were covered with genjutsu. It was apparently had more security than the last floor, but it was still light. Naruto then decided to take the second door from the right, since it was one of the doors that was hidden under one of the stronger illusions. Yes, you could grade illusions by how strong they were, there were 5 ranks actually. That one was a level 2, so it wasn't difficult to spot. Naruto continued to walk down the hallway for a few minutes. Awkward, usually genjutsus under the 3rd rank don't catch him off guard so easily. Naruto sighed, he was getting careless. Oh well, he might as well just move forward and try to make it to the top before he reaches to much resistance. Naruto looked back to see a man on the floor next to one of Naruto's Kage Bunshins. Kai. Naruto said, as the genjutsu ended and the door became visible. Naruto looked at the Kage Bunshin, who shook his head. So the man didn't alert the others. Such arrogance, but whatever. Naruto had the Bunshin take care of the body, as he begun to walk towards the door. He stopped a second later, as he just down the hallway. Wire traps, a shit load of them. By the way they're set up, if he touches the wire, he would set off the trap, and if he cut the wire, he might set it off with a added bonus. Naruto thought for a moment, before making some seals. Kage Shifudo no Jutsu. Naruto said, as his shadow moved towards the door. Once it was on the other side and clear of the traps, a shadow version of Naruto appeared on the other side of the traps. They then both sunk into the shadows, as they appeared on opposite sides. Naruto was now near the door and clear of the traps, while his shadow was at the beginning of it. The shadow version of him sunk back into its 2D self, while the shadow returned to its normal state. Naruto then walked through the door and up the stairs. Man, was he bored. Third test floor. Now this was a surprise, instead of having to go through hallways and beat their weak little traps. He was glazing upon a small recreation of the Forest of Death. Honestly, who the hell came up with the name, Forest of Death? These people had no talent in name things, I mean seriously. His name meant a ramen flavor. Wow, he felt loved. One of the many reasons that he is glad that he didn't have to stay in this village much longer. Naruto then proceeded to move through the forest, taking note of the nins, both male and female, that were waiting for him to come within a certain range. What they didn't realize is that you can never ambush a Uzumaki in a forest. So basically, Naruto just took a nice stroll towards the next door, not having to worry about the traps and genjutsu that was set throughout the forest. What the nin realized too late was that he was a Uzumaki, but that was before they were assaulted by the tree's roots and their genjutsus redirected towards them. Naruto laughed, as he walked through the door, looking over his shoulder to make one little statement. Don't do anything perverted. The trees seemed to move a bit, as if answering his question. Naruto then headed upwards towards the next room. Fourth test floor. Naruto just stared down the single hallway that was on the floor. He could easily see the door at the other end. That wasn't right. That would be too easy, and after all that crap a rookie would cry in joy at finding it and rush forward. Naruto just looked around the area, very interesting. They had heat and pressure panels all around the floor and they had chakra scanners all around the ceiling. Wires were all around the room as well, it was all very well concealed to boot. He couldn't do jutsu, or use chakra for that matter with the scanners on the ceiling. He couldn't cross the room, or he'd not only alert the guards of his position, but be blown straight to hell as well. What to do? Naruto thought, as he twirled a kunai in his hand. A second later he threw it towards the rightmost corner of the room, as the kunai hit the scanner's generator. You can just barely hear the buzzing sound coming from it, but once you do, it's an easy target. Naruto then walked up the wall and towards the other door, leaving all the other traps untouched. They really did try hard with this one, so Naruto had to give them credit. Even though their trap-making skills still sucked. The last hallway was like the last, only it was longer and had a metallic look to it. At the very end of it you could see a case with an object carefully placed in it. A small device, around hand size, was in it. The device seemed to have a monitor and a few buttons, along with an antenna-like thing attached to the top. Naruto wondered what it could be used for, but pushed that thought into the back of his mind for later. He then looked around the room. This was of course the most heavily guarded area in the entire complex, so he needed to be careful. There were no wire traps or explosion tags here. No, they went for the technology approach. There were pressure and heat panels running up and down the floor, along with chakra scanners on the ceiling. There were also searchlights, along with 5 guards in the room. Though it didn't have wire traps, there were lasers that, Naruto guessed, would not only trigger an alarm, but paralyze him. Naruto thought for a moment, before summoning 3 large spiders. Naruto put the spiders on the floor, as they begun to lay eggs at a high rate. Half a minute later, a large group of spiders were crawling up the wall, disabling the scanners. Naruto picked up the 3 original spiders and allowed them to retreat inside him, before aiming his hand. All his fingers except his index and thumb are closed, and bringing the first guard in sight. He needed to be quick about this. If the other guards spot his body before he can take them down, then he's royally screwed. He then shot spiders at all 5 guards in one rapid motion, taking them all down at once. Naruto then watched, as all the spotlights turned off one by one. Naruto waited for all the spiders to come back to him, before focusing chakra into his feet and using it to jump to the body of the first guard. He collected the spider from the guard's body, making sure not to fall over when the guard breathed in a little harder than usual. Hey, this was an exam, not the real thing. So Naruto could afford to let them live, go figure. He jumped from body to body, collecting the spiders he shot while moving forward. He may use these creatures on a daily basis, and put them in more life/death situations than he could count, but they were still family, even if they had a tendency to run throughout your body in the middle of the night, crawling throughout the little tunnels they made in your body just for the hell of it. Anyway, back to the subject at hand. Naruto was now standing in front of the case with the device. He knew the damn case was rigged. It was pretty damn clear after all of this shit they just put you through. The question was, what did they rig it with? Naruto thought for a moment, before something came to mind. It can't be that easy. Naruto thought, as he lifted the case and waited for an alarm to trip. But to his relief, nothing happened. Naruto then snatched the device and carefully placed the case back where it was. He then made his way down the tower towards the floor that came before the first test floor. There he saw a very interesting sight. 2 males and 1 female nin had dispelled his genjutsu and were staring at Sakura and Sasuke, who were still in their positions, giggling perversely the whole time. Honestly, Naruto real thought he was a genius by doing such a cliché thing like that in the middle of a test that could be life and death. He honestly was a genius. And he was even able to make the last part of the paragraph above rhyme too. Naruto appeared right behind the nin and tapped the middle one on the shoulder. "I'm sorry to interrupt your little love fest, but..." The 3 nin turned around to face Naruto, only to be knocked out before they could do anything. The 2 males hit the floor hard, as Naruto caught the female and set her on the floor gently. He was a gentleman to the very end, which could really suck at some points, but oh well. Naruto then looked over at his 2 teammates and formed some seals, Tsujishiki no Jutsu. Naruto said, as a green mist appeared around Sakura and Sasuke, while they started to open their eyes. They stared directly at Naruto, who just grinned at them. "Have a nice nap?" "I know I would if I were in a position like that," Naruto stated, as the 2 looked at the position that they were in, before getting up on their feet as fast as possible. Actually, he had been in that position and situation a couple times. He never did anything, but still. There was that one situation with the Queen of Snow Country. She was a very beautiful, hot, mid-20s-year-old woman that most men would jump at the chance to have activities with. But Naruto rejected her offer, which apparently she seemed to be satisfied with since she just gave the guy a tight hug and a small smile before leaving him alone for the rest of the day. Naruto felt a little guilty, but hey, he would have ran the chance of impregnating her and that would cause problems. They were still friends, even though he knew she still wanted to bang him, but that was irrelevant. Back to where we were, Naruto just grinned, as Sakura's face was flushed as hell and Sasuke glared at him with a new intensity. Naruto laughed, as he headed towards the door, his teammates looking at him in confusion. "What about the dash?" "Already taken care of," Naruto said, cutting off Sakura, while he walked out the door. Author, Naruto's a pimp. He truthfully is in my story, sheds tear, I'm so proud of him. Blows nose, please read and review. A Night for All and None. Author, I'm in a good mood today, since I just beat the living hell out of that damn godbird from Dragon Quest VIII. Man was she a bitch to fight. Anyway, on to the reviews. Section 72, glad that you liked it, remember Itachi's going to show up eventually and with a little surprise too. Bunny Kitty 4434, 0.0 Damn, what happened to the other 4,433? Just kidding, though I do agree that Naratoxiamius great, too bad there's not more of them. Ice Princess 421, Manacle Laughter, yes it was genuous. There shall be more of that on the way, so keep reading. Dragon Noir, hey, he's got his father's genes after all. Though, Hinata wouldn't be getting him in the sack for quite a while. As for Gaara's quirk, read this chapter to see it. No name, glad you like the story. Inu, Kag 101, your wish is granted, eyes glow, read the chapter to see it. Hope Master, it's going to be quite some time before he steps into the ring, so patient and don't worry about. Biggest boss, yep, in most FICs Naruto's a whore, but in this one, he's a pimp. Naruto/Hinata fluff in this chapter. Hardaramo, glad you like the story. SLR Path, size, yeah, it was difficult for me to write. Though it does serve a larger purpose in this story. Please continue to read the story to find it out, and thank you for reading. Now on to the FIC. Disclaimer, I do not own Naruto. Enjoy the FIC. A night for all and none. It was awkward when Team 7 walked out of the tower at exactly 9 minutes, 59 seconds. The examiners' jaws dropped as they scanned over Team 7 to see that they didn't have a scratch too. The other teams were frightened by this, oh hell yeah, and that was the intended effect that Naruto wanted. I mean, come on. Most teams are now going to be avoiding them for the rest of the exam. Which means less of a headache for Naruto. Let's face it, both Sakura and Sasuke were a little full of themselves. Wow, you were trained by Sanins, Wapdito, spins finger around, that means absolutely shit on the battlefield, seriously. If you're too busy gloating that you're more special than the enemy, you're going to get your ass whopped. Which would be a funny sight. For someone else, that is, hee hee. Getting back on track. After Team 7 came out and pretty much caused a heart attack for over half of the examiners. They proceed to go down the list, while Naruto watched with interest. After them was Team 8, Hinata and Shino's team. Naruto didn't really know the third guy's name, only that he acted like an idiot. Naruto felt bad for the dog that the man was riding on. No, it wasn't that the man was riding the dog, since it seemed big enough for two people, it was the simple fact that he had to put up with that guy more than others. Wait, a dog? Naruto finally realized. That guy must have been related to Hana in some way, since her family is the only family that uses dogs on a regular basis. Why? Because her family took care that no one else in Konoha would ever use dogs besides themselves. Quite a bloody history really. Now on to the test. In about 13 minutes, they managed to make it through the tower, a little scratches here and there, but nothing too big. The next team to go in was from Cloud, they weren't so lucky. The next team was once again from the Leaf, actually more specifically, it was Hanabi's and Okami's. Their third member must have been Zack's little brother. That kid, Naruto didn't like the feel he was getting from that kid. He was concealing a shit-load of chakra, and he had weapons galore underneath his hoodie. Naruto would need to watch this kid in the future. Their team made it out in 15 minutes, not bad. Though it could have been better. The next team was extremely famous around Konoha, not for their power, but for their trademark jutsus or their family's jutsus anyway. The fat one must be Choji, the skinny one in purple must have been Ino, and the one with the katana was Shikamaru. Yes, Naruto did meet him before, once. It was before he met up with his teammates. The guy seemed to like to repeat his saying, "too troublesome," a lot. Though he did have a point, a lot of the shit that happens is too troublesome, but it makes the world go round. They managed to make it through in 11 minutes. The next was Lee's team, who seemed to be so overjoyed that they were called next, that he ran up and hugged Ibiki. Naruto smiled at this, one of the few things he missed about this village, compared to most of the shit he hates, it is a few, was Lee's attitude, watching it never gets old. The woman shaking her head must have been 1010, the person Lee had told him about, while the other he personally knew. He wondered about how Neji must have changed over the years, due to Iam's influence, of course. He decided to think about it later when he saw them enter the building. They came out in 10 minutes, which was oh so close to theirs. A few more teams went in and out, some coming out with victory, while others came out with broken dreams and faced the harsh reality that they won't be able to try to be Jounin until next year. What a pity. On to the next team, which was Kin and Duzei's team from Sound. Naruto didn't have to worry about them, since he watched them train while he was with one of his students, who also seemed to be the only person that was not here at the moment, but then again, Zaku had a lot of stuff to take care of. So it was only natural that he wouldn't be able to come. Oh well, that team made it out in 11 minutes, like he said, he didn't have to worry about them. A few more teams later, and surprisingly a Snow Village team was called up, which was unusual. They had a tendency to stay in their country, leaving only when necessary. Meaning that they must have some other purpose here besides taking the exam, since they took their own personal exam in Snow Country. Yuki must be here, since even though Snow had shinobi, it was a peace-loving place. Not suiting Naruto in the least bit. It was awkward when they started to search for something until they finally saw him, bowing in his direction. Naruto just gave them a stiff nod, while they headed in. Come on, you'd think by now that Snow would have forgotten all about what happened a few years ago. I mean sure, he saved them from being destroyed by taking out a small army of Mist Nin, but come on. Then again, the only other person to ever do something like that was the fourth. Naruto was once again the second compared to him, it seems that he would always be in his shadow. Anyway, the Snow team came out in 14 minutes. A few more teams later until they reached a Sand team. He didn't know about one of the team members, but was familiar with Temari. The third one he knew all too well. Gaara of the Desert was one of the few that Naruto knew was a container. Yes, there were others that Naruto knew about, but now's not the time to discuss it, holding Shikaku, who was apparently an asshole, well by Kyuubi's standards anyway. Interesting really, since the boy isn't allowed to sleep at all thanks to the incomplete seal that holds the demon. Naruto wished that there was something he could do, but there wasn't, and life moves on. Now, since they were near a grassy area, Gaara had only Jounin capabilities and was limited to the sand that he brought with him, along with any minerals he could find in the ground. Now if they were in a desert area, he was well over Kage capabilities, since he could control the frickin' desert itself. Yeah, Naruto did make a note to never piss him off, unless he was bored. That team came out in 9 minutes and 46 seconds. The only reason they were fast was probably because Gaara just crushed everything with his sand, and he rode down from the top of the tower on a giant cloud of sand. They had to be given an hour break in order for the examiners to fix the huge S-wall in the side of the tower, before continuing the test. A few more people went in and out, until they did a very shocking thing. Apparently, since not all the teams had tested, they weren't allowed to leave and had to sleep overnight in the area that was near the tower, so that they could be watched, since some of the teams could give information to other teams about what they could expect when they enter the tower. Naruto just sighed, as he hoped into a tree and found a nice comfortable branch to sleep on, his two teammates sleeping near the bottom. Of course, Naruto didn't notice this, since he was too busy falling into sleep, drifting off into slumberland. Naruto turned a bit, as he moved on to his other side of the gigantic branch that he was sleeping on. Seriously, like 3 people could sleep on this branch and still be able to have room. Naruto loved how big the trees were, but then again, he did use his family trait to make it grow slightly. Naruto turned again, as he moved towards the right, a little closer to the edge. A bug started to fly around Naruto, until it landed on his nose. Naruto tried to swash it, but ended up hitting himself when it flew away just in time. The bug returned, and landed on his nose once again, before the process repeated itself. A few more tries later and Naruto was flinging his hands in every direction, attempting to kill the ninja that was apparently dodging all of his graceful moves. That's what he mumbled in his sleep anyway, as he still could not hit the fly, while edging ever so closer to the edge. Until finally, with one powerful swing, fell over the edge and into a pile of leaves. He quickly stood up a second later, as a few leaves fell down from his clothing. Naruto's eyes bolted from left to right, trying to see if he woke anyone. Naruto sighed, as he walked out of the grass. He was up and it was going to stay like that for a while. Naruto then decided to go for a walk. Naruto pulled out a scroll and opened it, chanting whatever was on it. His eyes glowed yellow for a moment, before he rolled up the scroll and put it back in its holder. While he's taking a walk, he might as well gather some information, that and blackmail material. You never know what people will do in their sleep. Naruto walked for a while, trying to find anything that would be worth some interest. He searched for quite some time until he came across his first victims. Ino, Choji and Shikamaru were all sleeping peacefully. Ino rolled up into a ball, mumbling "Sasuke-kun" every now and then. Choji was laying with his back against a tree, a bag of chips in his lap and him snoring very loudly. A single chip was balancing on the tip of his nose, which was something that Naruto didn't understand, but recorded anyway. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Shikamaru wasn't really doing anything, just sleeping with his hands behind his head and his legs crossed, nothing special. Naruto then moved on to Kin's team, which was a little better than the last. Dose was just sleeping on the ground, back to the sky, nothing special. Naruto moved on to the new teammate, who had his headphones still on and was lightly banging his head a bit to the music. He was sleeping on his side so it didn't hurt him. Kin was a little hard to find, but was worth it. She basically looked the same as Choji, only her bag was twice as big and she was snoring louder. This was good, this was very good. Naruto recorded it without a moment's hesitation. He moved on. The next team was Lee's, which was nothing too special. Lee and Tenten were just sleeping on the grass, lightly snoring, while Neji was near a tree in a meditative position, but if you listened closely, you could hear light snoring. Nothing much, but Naruto decided to record it anyway, might as well while he's there. After that was his aunt's team, which were relatively easy to find. What was interesting was that both Irvine and Okami had their backs against the same tree, Okami's head on Irvine's shoulder and both sound asleep. Oh, this was good, he could get some pretty nice stuff from Shino for this. Naruto recorded it and looked for Hanabi, and when he found her, he struggled to not grab his sides and fall to the floor laughing. It was a losing battle. Hanabi, one of the most renowned nin for being a ice queen to most, was currently snuggling up against a log and mumbling "Lee-kun" very frequently. Kami-sama, this was gold. Naruto spent a few minutes just watching this, recording every bit of it. It was beautiful blackmail material. Naruto actually shed a tear when he finished. He then moved on. The next team was the Sans team. One that was pretty much not worth anything in terms of amusement. The girl on the team was just sleeping on the grass quietly, while the guy with the cloak on was just sleeping with his back against a tree, but where was Gaara? Naruto smirked. It's been a while, Gaara, he said, as he felt sand starting to engulf his body. Gaara stood right behind him, his face still expressionless. Naruto turned around to face him, while the sand started to retract itself. What, no hug? What are you doing here? Gaara asked, as he started to walk towards his teammates. Just taking a little walk, Naruto stated, as he rubbed his head sheepishly and grinned. Gaara just continued to stare at him. What? You're not the only container with sleep issues, Naruto stated, as a small collection of sand rose out of the ground right next to Gaara. Then why do you have a memory scroll active? Gaara asked, as Naruto looked down at the scroll case and cursed. To collect valid information, Naruto said, as Gaara started to gather sand around Naruto. Okay, I was getting stuff for blackmail. Alright? Naruto said, as the sand started to disappear. Gaara just crushed the memory scroll with his sand. Then you won't be getting this back, Gaara stated, as the sand dropped the now ruined scroll to the ground, while Naruto cursed once again, before he started to grin evilly. Ah, and I was so hoping to see you sleeping with Mr. Smee too, Naruto said, as Gaara's eyes widened, before sand started to gather rapidly around Naruto. If you tell anyone. Don't worry, I'm not going to tell anyone about your teddy bear with the eye patch, Naruto said, as he burst into laughter. Gaara's eye started to twitch, or it at least tried to twitch anyway. Naruto, I'm giving you 10 seconds to leave. 1, 2. Naruto was already gone. Naruto had one more group to look for before he would be satisfied for the night. You're probably wondering what Naruto was doing still wandering around, even though his memory scroll was destroyed. Well, to put it so simple that you should have guessed on your own, he had a backup one that had all of what he recorded from the first on it. He was just lucky that Gaara didn't notice it. He finally found his friend's team, as he started to record them. The guy with the dog wasn't doing much, only using his oversized dog as a pillow. Shino was one of the others that was in a meditative, sitting position. He seemed to be asleep, but it was hard to tell since Shino barely made any noise to begin with. He then moved on to the final person, Hinata. She was sleeping in the grass close to Shino, rolled up into a ball. Her face had a peaceful expression, while her hair was scattered around the ground. Naruto thought for a moment, before he sighed and turned off the memory scroll. He just couldn't do it, not like he would ever need to blackmail Hinata in the first place, but still, he just couldn't collect any blackmail on her. That, and there was nothing worth collecting. Naruto looked down at Hinata and watched her shiver a bit. Naruto pulled out a scroll and opened it. A blanket popped out of the scroll, while Naruto caught before it hit the ground. Naruto then covered Hinata with it and watched her instantly grab it and snuggle against it. Naruto just smiled as he began to walk back to his team. A second later, a pupilless eye shot open. Naruto walked slowly towards the tree, as he yawned a bit. It had been quite some time since he woke up and his body was now willing to let him get some rest. That he was thankful for, considering what was going to happen, or what could happen, in the morning. As soon as Naruto reached the tree, he immediately jumped onto the tree branch that he was last on and sat down, legs out and back against the tree. As soon as he was comfortable, he slowly closed his eyes, hoping that sleep would take him soon. 3 minutes later. Naruto-kun, a voice called out to him, while Naruto opened his eyes and looked around. Naruto-kun, down here. The voice stated, as Naruto looked at the ground. There on the ground was Hinata, standing there with the blanket that Naruto had given her. She just smiled at him when Naruto looked at her confusedly. "Hinata, what are you doing here?" Naruto asked, as Hinata blushed. I had a bad dream," Hinata stated, as she looked down at the ground. Naruto just raised an eyebrow at this. "That still doesn't answer my question," Naruto said, as Hinata looked up at him, her blush deepening. I was wondering if I could sleep with you tonight," Hinata asked, as Naruto just thought it over. Seriously, this wasn't something you expected. You'd think she would have gotten over the nightmare thing by now, but oh well. Naruto thought about it some more, before looking down at Hinata, her face pretty much showing that was she really desperate. What kind of a nightmare could she have had anyway? Naruto took one more glance at her, before sighing. "Alright," Naruto said, as Hinata's face instantly turned into a smile. She immediately jumped up into the tree, while Naruto scouted over a bit to give her some more room. What caught Naruto off was that she sat in between his legs and laid her back against his chest. She moved/snuggled her way back, making sure to be as close to Naruto as possible. Naruto's face had turned dark red when she rubbed against that region. Hinata took Naruto's arms and wrapped them around her waist, saying that it was to keep her from falling off. She then threw the blanket over them, covering them both. Hinata then looked over at Naruto. "Thanks," was all she said, before leaning her head back and letting it find a comfortable position on Naruto's chest. Naruto had frozen for a few moments before he sighed and made himself comfortable. He knew this was going to cause hell in the morning. But for tonight, he would just enjoy heaven. Author, Gaara has an obsession with pirates. Maniacal laughter, I am such a freakin' genius. Read and review. There shall be no quarter. Author, nothing new, only that I'm starting school again. So the next chapters might be coming out slower than usual. Anonymous, don't really care, to tell the truth. My stories will never be perfect, and that's the point. I want people can read a good story, without have to look for grammar errors or some stupid crap. If you still don't like it, then my guest had something to tell you. A man in red walks in, this is his story, and you're not a part of it, he walks back out. Well said Oren, well said. Kyubi-sama, thanks for reading. Biggest boss, that was the point, glad that you liked it. Section 72. I know he's evil, I taught him everything after all, coughs, anyway, thank you for reading and I hope that I get some time to be able to read yours soon. Blockybu, 0.0, what would have made it the best, is if Hook screamed out Mr. Smee, as you were reading it. That would have been pure gold. Thank you for reading. Loaned, as it has been stated before, I am. And thank you for reading. Hope Master, you know it's almost impossible to read you reviews? Don't worry, my secret techniques will help me translate it. Thanks for reviewing. Don't expect anything. Then you are never disappointed, lazy ass, though I am glad that you liked the story. TOB, that would have been true, if this weren't an AUFIC. In this one, sound is a nation. Hee. Thanks for reading. Tainted Wings Black and White, damn straight. Thank you for reading. Ice Princess 421. Yes it is. Hinata Savexen, Grins, just got a few new ideas. Manacle Laughter, Midnight Angle of Darkness, 0.0, cute name, but Koriheim's is cuter. Yes people, I come from a palsy where I can call someone cute and not be hitting on them. Thanks for reading. Anime Boy 07, like with Tainted, damn straight. Thanks for reading. Dragon Nori, the pirate teddy bear pawns all, Manacle Laughter. Animarol 0392, I know I'm evil, that's why I'm so good. You have to think for a moment with Hinata, she was taught by Tsunade after all. Of course some part of her personality is going to rub off on her. Besides, what man wouldn't want a beautiful woman between their legs? Okay, that came out wrong, screw it. 0.0. That came out wrong, fuck dash, oh just go read the damn FIC already. Disclaimer, I do not own Naruto, enjoy the FIC. There shall be no quarter. Naruto. Naruto heard a faint voice call out to him, but he ignored it. Naruto. The voice was a little louder, but Naruto ignored it and continued his peaceful slumber. Naruto. The voice had yelled out to him. As Naruto started to consider opening his eyes. Naruto, damn it, wake the fuck up. The voice yelled, as Naruto yawned and opened up one of his eyes. Yup. Sakura. So Sakura-chan, what may I do for you on this fine morning? Naruto asked in a very cheerful voice, choosing to overlook how Sakura's anger had risen to new levels in the past 3 minutes. Sakura pointed towards his chest. Start by explaining that. Sakura yelled, as Naruto just stared at her and moved one of his hands to clean out his ear. Please be a little less loud in the morning. You might have woken Hinata-chan up. Naruto said, as he continued to clean out his eardrum. Sakura was about to yell at him again, but stopped for a moment, and decided to calm herself down. Sakura took a few seconds to calm down, before her face formed into a strained smile. Alright Naruto-kun, could you please tell me why Hinata-chan is sleeping over here with you, instead of being with her team? Sakura asked slowly, dragging out some of the parts. Naruto just looked down at Hinata's sleeping form and smiled, before grinning a bit. Oh, Hinata-chan wanted to sleep with me. Naruto said, as he examined Sakura's expression, or actually lack of expression. Her face was just blank. Because she had a bad dream last night. Naruto stated, as Sakura sighed in relief. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Been having some intimidating thoughts, Sakura? Naruto asked, as Sakura's face turned into a nice shade of red. Pervert. Naruto added, as he looked down at Hinata. Before he moved his head downwards to where his lips were right next to her ear. Hinata-chan, wake up, we have a quest. Naruto stated, as Hinata moved a bit. She then slowly opened her eyes to the sight of a slightly red-faced Sakura. Naruto then turned his attention to Sakura. It seems that we've been caught, Hinata-chan, what are we going to do now? Naruto said, as Hinata turned red as well, while Sakura just kept her head down. A second later, Hinata began to stand up, or attempted until she fell back on Naruto, letting out a light, yep. Naruto only grinned. Hinata-chan, so playful in the morning. I like it. Naruto said, as Sakura's face reddened. Naruto roared with laughter, while Hinata just sighed and attempted to stand up again. Succeeding, she took the blanket that they were using and handed it to Naruto. If you little bitches are done, I would like to explain that it is illegal to fuck during the exam. A voice stated, as Ibiki appeared on the tree branch next to them. Hinata's blush returned, while Naruto just looked over at Ibiki. Technically, we only slept next to each other. We didn't really do anything. Naruto stated, as Ibiki crossed his arms. Same deference. You know, Ibiki, you look like you could really use hug right now. Hey _. Alright. Alright. I won't bother you about it anymore, just don't include him. Ibiki shivered, as his face actually showed fear. Naruto thought for a moment, either make this guy feel the horror that is Lee, or get expelled from the test. Naruto nodded his head. Deal. Naruto said, as Ibiki sighed in relief. His face hardened again a second later. Good, now if you're through here. Report to the tower entrance, now. Ibiki said, as he disappeared in a puff of smoke. Naruto looked over at Sakura, who had kept quiet the entire time. Hey Sakura-chan, where's Sasuke-kun? Naruto asked, as Sakura looked up at him with a confused expression, before she finally remembered. He went on ahead, in fact everyone else has. They're just waiting for you. Sakura stated, as Naruto nodded and looked over at Hinata. Well, shall we be on our way then? Every team that passed the first exam was now gathered at the tower, each of them wondering what was going to happen next. Apparently, they held the rest of the exams while Hinata and Naruto were sleeping, and when they weren't at the gates when the teams were called, Sakura came looking for them. Of course everyone glared at Naruto and Hinata when they finally showed up. Naruto just waved at them, while Hinata sighed and said goodbye to them, before heading to where her team was. Sakura pulled Naruto towards theirs. When everyone was ready, Ibiki spoke. Alright, listen up. I'm going to make this as short as possible. Ibiki yelled, as everyone gave their full attention to him. Your next test is going to be a field test to see if you can survive in not just harsh environments, but all environments. Ibiki stated, as everyone looked confusedly at him. Ibiki formed some seals and hit the ground. A large seals appeared underneath everyone, as it began to glow bright red. A second later, they disappeared without a trace. It was shocking to most of them, though few just remained calm as they looked at Ibiki. Ibiki himself grinned at their reaction. This is going to be where we test you. He stated, as he motioned towards the area in question. It was huge to say the least. They, from what Naruto could tell, were located on the top of a very high mountain. They were on a cliff that was quite far away from the actual area, probably so that they could show the rookies it just to scare the shit out of them. And it worked, for the most part. The area was as big as half of Konoha and seemed to have all kinds of terrain mixed in. Forest, lakes, hills, rocky areas, deserts. Shit. Gaara's terrain, etc., the damn thing was crawling with animals from all over the nations as well. How he knew? Well, considering he was watching 3 oversized birds eating an even larger beetle, it wasn't difficult to figure out. They seemed to have seals all around the area, keeping each zone at its more comfortable temperatures. In the center of it all was a large tower, high enough to be seen from all the zones, no matter where you were. "Pay attention!" Ibiki yelled, as everyone looked back at him. "Now, to start, take out the item that you got from the first tower," Ibiki said, as everyone pulled it out. "You may have noticed or not, but the antenna does serve a purpose. Through that antenna you are able to send a special signal between the devices that each team has." Ibiki looked over at the tower. "Your objective is to get 5 of these special signals and head towards the tower, where they will be used to open the door to the tower." Ibiki then pointed towards the right to where a stand was set up. "Over there you will be able to get a scroll that will teleport you over to the area. Each scroll wrapping a team to a different gate. Once everyone has teleported over to the gate, we will begin the exam." He then teleported away in a puff of smoke, as the teams walked towards the stand. Naruto looked around the area that they were in, again. This place was in Cloud Country. Seriously, it was in Cloud Country. There were only 2 places in the elemental nations that had mountains as large as these, and they looked nothing like the ones in Rock. Naruto was so screwed. The Cloud Nin still hadn't forgot about that fight he had with one of theirs. Even though it was over 8 years ago, they still held a grudge. He couldn't blame them, who would be pissed that an 8-year-old beat the shit out of one of their jounin. They became the laughing stock of the elemental nations, with Naruto now having a price on his head. 470,000 to be exact. Along with their Umbu and Hunter Nin after him. Naruto really felt the love there. He only hoped that the Cloud Nin that were taking this didn't get a chance to identify him, or else he was going to be in deep shit. Irvine sighed. It had been a very awkward morning for him. First he woke up to find that something heavy was on his shoulder, which was strange. When he looked over and saw Okami, Irvine's face turned red. Okami woke up a few minutes later and thanked Irvine for letting her use him like a pillow that was tense as hell, but a pillow regardless. After that, Hanabi began to bitch, again. Honestly, he'd rather spend an evening with Temari PMSing than listen to her go on constantly, even though the Temari thing actually happened once. Irvine still shudders at the memory. He didn't know how Hanabi and Hinata could be so different, yet be sisters. He truly couldn't. Then again, he was a guy, so it was understandable. Then, he had a hard time locating a very special scroll. The reason why it was so special was that it was used by his brother and was passed on to him when Zack died. He kept that scroll with him at all times. Well, not all times, but you get the point. He searched frantically for it, checking every bush, tree, animal, one of which he pissed off. Yep, he was getting desperate and running out of time, too. Okami offered to help search for the scroll, and so they spent the next 5 minutes looking for it. Okami was the one to find it, and when she did, Irvine was jumping for joy. Seriously, he ran up to her and gave her Okami a tight huge, before he realized what he was doing and pulled back. Her mouth twitched a bit, before she handed him the scroll and walked away. It itself was strange for the fact that Okami had never shown any form of expressions before, or that's at least what he heard. He wondered what was wrong, but let it slide. He had other things to worry about. The exam itself was going to be held in an all-terrain field, so he couldn't prepare for just one type of area. It was always good to gain as much information about the area and anything that could be of use, including people. It was one of the 5 great inventing rules that all inventors followed. 1. Always have full stock, always be ready. 2. Know your area and what you can use in that area. 3. Never waste your resources. 4. Know your limits, so that you can pass them. 5. Taking risks is a part of life, use it to your advantage. The 5th rule was confusing. He didn't know why it was one of the rules, it just always was. The great inventor came up with them. It was an old story about how a man carved special summons out of stone using whatever he could. He went through every one of those rules as he carved the creatures, infusing them with the spirits of departed creatures. He then created the rules out of his own experiences, so that no other inventor would have to endure the harsh conditions that he did as he made the summons. Though the man went on to create more items, but the summons are the most well-known. Irvine sighed, as he reached into his hoodie and pulled out something. It was a pendant, one of which was very special to him. It was given to him by his mother, who died a long time ago. She trusted him with a very important thing, something that proved he was an inventor. It was one of those summons that the great inventor made, and the only one that came in such large quantities. All inventors had it, as it was a sign that you were approved by the first actual summon that the man made. What was so special about it was that it allowed him to summon his mother's creature, which became one of his more trusted allies. This and the scroll he got from his brother were the most important things he had and always kept with him. They had saved him before, of course. His sensei, Uzumaki Shizun, once caught him training one day. She found out everything that he could do. It's not like that he was angry with her or anything, it's just that she would report what she saw to the Hokage. If that were to happen, then the information on him would be updated and accessible to anyone. That could be a good or bad thing depending on the person. Regardless, he went to the Hokage and pleaded that he keep what he learned just between them. The Hokage agreed, for a price. The Hokage was interested in his techniques and wanted him to help him research data for his books. Even though Irvine wasn't a pervert, he was getting desperate. So, hesitantly, he agreed to it. Irvine knew he was going to get in a shitload of trouble after this. What he didn't know was that Okami was at the hot springs that day. I'll leave the rest up to your imagination. What stunned him were how beautiful her eyes were. They were glazed over like a bug's, but were light blue and only took up most of her eyes. Since a little bit of it was white at the sides, symbolizing that the glazed part was a bigger version of a pupil. She started to act strange after he told her what he thought about them, but then again all bug users were strange in his opinion, especially one person that we all know and love, unless you're a Sasuke fan. Then you might hate him. Irvine's head lowered a bit when he thought about it. He was overlooked by most people because of the team he was on. I mean, think about it, he was on the team of 3 of the most powerful clans in the whole village. And they questioned why he had self-esteem issues. The 3 clans usually meet ever so often, and he was invited, of course, by his teammates and sensei. But he just kinda stood out. Considering that these were the Aburmine, Hyuga, and Uzumaki clans we're talking about, standing out is a bad thing. Irvine sighed, as he started to head towards the stand to get a scroll. He thought about what could happen during this test. Who knows, he might just be able to show just how strong he is. Or die trying, literally. Author, one of the rules sounds familiar, huh? Read and review. The intertwining of another. Author, Anime Boy 07, thanks for reading and reviewing. Section 72, you're probably the only person that paid attention to that part. And after all the hard work I put into it being original, anyway, thanks for taking notice. Sliver Snow Wolf, don't worry, I figured it out on my own. Lee is one of my favorite characters, I wish people would stop treating him like he's an idiot. Lunark Shinobi, damn straight. Thanks for reading. FF Lover HP1, I try my best, well not really, thank you for reading. Midnight Angle of Darkness, yes, for Lee Pawns all, thanks for reading. Hope Master. Yep, thank you for reading. Trapped Soul, Sweat Drops Ya, it doesn't really get good until the 10th chapter, well that's what I think a lot of people would agree on. Total wrong. But at least you tried to guess it. Thanks for reading. Ekibaka-kan, yeah, but there would be lawsuits and other crap to deal with. That, and she needed to get Naruto home as fast as possible. Loaned, we'll need to get him a stick soon, or else he's going to get wrapped eventually. I almost feel bad for him. Tob, it's fine, as long as you enjoy the story and yourself. I'm glad to see that you found the story again, since there have been times where I wasn't to read a story but can't remember its name. On the summons, I can't tell you. All I can say is that there are as of right now going to be 12 summons that Naruto has, referred to as the Shinobi 12, and that he's going to summon all of the bosses at least once. I can list the ones he's summoned or mentioned so far. Squirrel, don't know where Lee got it. Spiders, leaf apes, leaf frog, leaf slugs, leaf raccoons, Suna. The other 6 have yet to be identified. XD, sucks to not be the author, don't it? Now go read the story. Disclaimer, I do not own Naruto. Enjoy the FIC. The intertwining of another. Naruto looked around the area with mild interest. It had been an hour since they were assigned to Gate 13 of the new test field in Cloud Country. It really didn't have a name from what he could tell, so he just called it CC area, which is not that all creative. They were right next to the edge of the field itself, since apparently the people that built this place wanted there to be as much room in the field as possible. Naruto looked over at his teammates. Sakura was on the ground meditating, trying to keep herself calm before the exam. Sasuke, being the arrogant bastard that he is, was just brooding about how he had to go through the test again. Of course he had already gone through the test already, he was a jounin after all. Probably the only reason why they were there was because Sakura had failed it once. What about him, you ask? Naruto wasn't a fan of higher ranks. That meant more work that you had to do after all. Naruto sighed, as he stood up from the side of the fence that he was leading on and walked towards the gate. Sasuke turned high attention towards him, as Naruto stopped when he was right next to the gate. What the hell are you doing now? Sasuke asked, as Naruto looked over at him. Waiting? Naruto replied, as Sakura finished her meditating and stood up. For what? She asked, as Naruto just grinned. A second later, the explosion tag on the gate blew, as the gigantic gates blew open. Naruto grinned, as he looked back at the other two. That. Sasuke and Sakura ran as fast as they could through the forest, jumping from tree to tree. They moved easily and swiftly along the branches, keeping their guard up at all times. To most, they would seem like a blur, but to others, well, they were struck down before they could even see them. They were two of the best nin in all of the village, nothing could stop them, nothing could break their concentration, nothing could slow them down. Sasuke-kun, where's Naruto? Sakura asked, as Sasuke looked back to see that Naruto was gone. Okay, scratch that last one. Both of them made a 180-degree turn, as they backtracked to find Naruto. He had been, in the past 1 or 2 months, they didn't know actually date, but you get the idea. He had berated them, made fun of them, and pretty much beaten them without even trying. It's like he was trying to break them down or something. He was relentless, always keeping it up, and both of them were about to snap. Both of them agreed that if Naruto didn't have a good excuse for not keeping up with them, then they were going to kick his ass. Not like they could anyway. And to their surprise, when they finally found him, he was casually walking, on the ground. This actually pissed both Sakura and Sasuke to a degree of which they never thought possible. As their anger rose, they looked down once again to see Naruto reading a book. They couldn't read what the title was, but they could make out something about a stream. Naruto looked up at them lazily, as the two glared down at him. Yo! Naruto said, as he raised his other hand up, while the other two jumped down. What the hell are you doing? Sakura yelled, as Naruto he cleaned out one of his ears with his pinky. Naruto just yawned, as his eyes closed. Think you could keep the volume down? We are in an exam that tests if we could survive in a life or death situation after all. Naruto said, as Sasuke glared at Naruto. Then why the hell are you reading that damn book at a time like this? Sasuke shouted, as Naruto raised his hand, signaling him to wait. Naruto flipped to the next page in the book, as he chucked a bit. He then read down the page some more, while Sasuke was getting impatient. "Naruto, damn it, answer me!" Sasuke yelled, as Naruto looked lazily up from the book. "Oh Sasuke, did you say something?" Naruto asked, as Sasuke was close to pulling out his hair. Suddenly, Naruto pulled out a kunai with his other hand and deflected some shuriken with it. Sakura and Sasuke immediately got into a stance, as Naruto looked over at the enemies. Wow, not even 5 minutes in and we're already attacked. I wonder why. Naruto asked out loud to himself, as his teammates just sweat dropped. The other team didn't say anything. They were from grass apparently, due to their forehead protectors. Not much could distinguish them apart, since all three wore black body suits. One male, two females. The males were slightly taller than the female, but by the way they were formed, she seemed to be the squad leader. The males had short dark brown hair, while the female had long brown hair. "I want to fight your strongest." "Who's your leader?" the female asked, as Naruto looked at the other two. "That's a good question, who is the leader anyway?" Naruto asked, as Sasuke and Sakura looked at each other, before turning back to him. "Who do you think?" Sasuke asked with a smirk, while Naruto just shrugged. Okay. Naruto said, as he turned back to the other team. The female was apparently getting impatient. He coughed a bit, before donning a serious face. Naruto looked at the three, as they gave him their full attention. "The leader is me." Sasuke and Sakura face faulted, as the other three sweat dropped. Sasuke was immediately back on his feet, pissed once again. "I'm the leader, damn it!" Sasuke shouted, as Naruto looked over at him. "Sasuke, do you really want to fight these guys?" "Not really." "Then let me be the leader for a few minutes and be a good little boy by sitting at the sidelines," Naruto said, as Sasuke growled at him for the remark, as he mumbled something and went to go stand next to Sakura. Naruto turned to face the female once again. "So, what are the conditions?" Naruto asked, as the female just glared at him. "What do you think?" "Trust me, a man can think of a lot of things." "Pervert." "No, but a lot of my family members are," Naruto stated, as he got into a stance, the female following suit. A second later, they charged. Naruto sighed, as he went over what had happened a few hours ago. It was awkward, to say the least. Naruto did win, of course, quite easily really, but it's what happened after the battle that was interesting. Naruto stared down at the female on the ground, her looking up at him with a glare. The battle didn't last that long, 3 minutes at best. The female had lost horribly and that was disappointing to Naruto. Her two teammates were standing behind her, their jaws hitting the floor. They both looked at each other, before turning back to Naruto. A second later, then ran for their lives, completely forgetting about their teammate. Said teammate cursed, as she looked up at Naruto. Her eyes shifting from glaring at him to just staring tiredly at him. "Aren't you going to do it?" the female asked, as Naruto looked at her confusedly. "Do what?" "Kill me." The girl's face showed confusion, as Naruto began to laugh quite loud. Both Sasuke and Sakura looked at him confusedly as well. Naruto then turned his attention back to the female, while she waited for him to strike. Not sure if it would be short and painless, or long and brutal. "No," Naruto said, as the female looked up at him. "Well then, what can I do? My teammates decided to be assholes, I've have no more points. What the hell can I?" The female stopped when she saw Naruto put out one of his hands. The female looked at him with a confused expression. "You could come with us," Naruto stated, as the female just ignored him. "Seriously, you could and can. I mean, like you said, you've pretty much lost two very vital parts to this test. So what's there to lose? Naruto asked, as the female glared at him, before sighing and taking his hand. So, do you do this for all women who are going to fail one of the most critical tests in their lives or just me? She asked while Naruto pulled her up. Only the cute ones. The girl, known as Ikusa, had been oddly quiet from that point forward. Which was nice, since both of his teammates were yelling at him constantly. They seemed to not like the idea of another person joining their merry group of people. Of course, Naruto just told them that it's better to have a fourth-man squad than a three. Besides, maybe Sakura-chan will bother her instead of us. Naruto mouthed to Sasuke, who silently agreed. It was going to be a long test and Naruto would like as much quiet as possible. If possible. Arimatsuri no Jutsu. A huge hand shot out of the ground, as the insects that made up the hand slow ate at the people that it was holding high into the air. Okami did a few more seals, as she slammed her hand on the ground once again. Ari Kujiku, she said, as the bugs marched forward towards the hand and moved up it. A few seconds later, it turned into a large dome that was being held up by a few pillars that were made out of the bugs. Okami watched on, as the bugs ate their way through the team from grass. A second later, she heard a scream coming from inside the dome. All right. We'll give you ours, just please stop. A scream was heard from the inside of the dome. The bugs started to scatter away from the three people, a second later returning to Okami. Irvine and Hanabi looked on at the scene with a mixture of disgust and interest. What kind of ants were those again? Hanabi asked, as Okami went up to what was left of the bodies and searched them. Fire ants. Okami said, as she continued to search through the belongs of the grass nin. A second later, she found what she was looking. She then turned to face Hanabi and threw the device at her. Here. Okami said, as Hanabi caught the device. She pulled out their team's device and began to switch the grass nin points over to their device, now giving them 3. Hanabi chucked the device behind her, as she looked at Okami with a grin. A few hours in and we have at least 3 points, not bad. Hanabi said, as she looked down at the device. A second later she started to look around the area. Where's Irvine? Hanabi asked, as Okami pointed towards the grass nin. Irvine was apparently searching through their equipment for anything usable. Hanabi raised an eyebrow when he sighed in relief. What exactly were you looking for? Hanabi asked, as Irvine held out his hand. This. Irvine said, as Hanabi looked down at the green-colored flare. She then turned her attention back to Irvine, who was smiling. So, what are we going to use this for? Hanabi said, as she looked over at Okami, who sighed and walked over to them. Irvine's smile widened. First, we need to set up some traps. Primary Lotus. Lee cried out, as he opened the first gate and struck the enemy, hard. The enemy was sent spiraling towards the ground, as a huge-ass crater was formed when he landed. The other 2 teammates tried to slash Lee with kunai from opposite sides, he just stepped aside. The 2 collided with one another, as they hit the ground. Lee walked over to the now unconscious Cloud Nin and looked through their equipment. Once he folded the device, he smiled brightly, as he then began to cry. I've done it, Guy-sensei. I'm step closer to being like you. Lee thought, as he continued to cry. Tenten and Niji looked out on the scene before them and sighed, before Tenten looked over at Niji. Is he going to do this every time? Tenten asked, as Niji just continued to watch Lee, who was now posing in front of a squirrel that was passing by. Niji looked over at her and slightly nodded. Tenten was starting to get pissed. You mean we have to stay another 9 days out here with? Tenten pointed over towards Lee. That, she said, as Lee stopped his posing contest with the squirrel, yes people, it was posing with him, and looked over at Tenten. Tenten, do you need anything? Lee asked, as Tenten started to sweat. Yeah, we need that device so we can add its points to ours. Tenten said hesitantly, as Lee just gave his nice guy pose. He then threw the device over towards her, before resuming the pose. He then began to pose with the squirrel again. Both Tenten and Niji sighed again. This was going to be a learning test. Author, read and review. Oh, and I'm not sure if that was the primary lotus is the first gate. But, I'm hoping that it is. If not, can someone tell me the gates so far? Hidden in the grass. Author, nothing new. Tiobi, when you do make a story, I'll be happy to read it. Though your title is, to be blunt, it sucks. That, and dragons are overrated in Naruto fics. They've been used so many times that dragons are to calm man. I can tell you now, the Naruto in this FIC will never have a dragon summoning, oh hell no. There may be one dragon in this FIC, but besides that, screw them. But, I'm interested in the story. So tell me more please. Section 72, damn straight. Thanks for telling me about the gates, by the way. Cormoran, it's already been decided. Lillian is fickle, what can I say, I'm not the best speller in the world, but if you enjoy the FIC, does it matter? Thanks for reviewing. Midnight Angle of Darkness, thanks for reviewing, damn, you have such a kick-ass name. Anime, Boy 07, Squirrels Shall Rule Someday, thanks for reviewing. Boo the Ghost, a little late, but at least I've practically rearranged who Hinata acts, so we don't have to put up with her shyness anymore, thanks for reading. Loaned, damn straight, Lee is the man. Naruto being rapped won't in this one, unless I get bored anyway. Fluffy Kagome, thanks for reviewing. Blue Bargain, probably, in a sense, though he still has it. Hope Master, actually, it was longer than the chapter before it, so, yeah. Dragon Noir, thank you for the information on the gates, it was a big help. Think you could tell me where the fan art with Lee and the squirrel is? Disclaimer, I do not own Naruto, enjoy the FIC. Hidden in the grass. The afternoon sun was shining brightly above, as a breeze passed by Hinata. It felt so good to her, being out in the hot sun and all. She glanced around the area from the cliff she was standing on, admiring its beauty. It had been a few days since the beginning of the field exam, and nothing had really happened. Hinata and her team had managed to get 3 points so far, taking care as to who they attacked. It would have been stupid and reckless to attack just anybody after all. To tell the truth, it had been very dull for Hinata. She had not seen any of her friends, minus teammates, since the beginning of the exam. Which could be a good or bad thing, depending on the situation. Since Hinata was so bored at the moment, it would be a good thing. She was able to find something that could slightly keep her interest, which was the beautiful scenery of the area that the exam was taken place. Isuna would like this. Hinata thought, as she looked around the area. It was breathtaking for Hinata, to see so many different areas in on spot. It looked, at the same time, both man-made and natural. It was awkward when she stared at the area from the cliff, seeing all the different areas together, but it was something that she wouldn't turn up. Hinata knew that she was an easy target while standing on the cliff, but the scenery was just so good. Speaking of easy targets, Hinata wiped out a kunai and deflected some shuriken into random directions. Hinata stared lazy at the forest behind her, as she waited for whoever threw the shuriken to come out and attack her. That's if they ever got the chance anyway. Hinata went back to looking at the scenery, as she heard screams coming from the forest. A second later, both Shino and Kiba dropped down from the trees, Archimer following them down a second later. Kiba grinned at her, while Shino kept his stoic expression. Hinata-chan. We've got 4 points now. Kiba yelled to her, as Hinata smiled and took one last look at the scenery, before going over to her teammates. She'd have to give up looking at the scenery, for now. Ikusa-chan, these guys have 2 points. Come get yours. Naruto said, as Ikusa walked over to Naruto. Ikusa had been traveling with them for the past few days now, helping them from time to time and them in return helping her. Naruto even gave her any excess points that they found. Naruto's team now had 3 points, while Ikusa had 2. You're probably wondering, why the hell is she still collecting points if she doesn't have a team? Quite simple. This isn't the Chunin exam, so the same rules don't apply. She was able to complete the test as long as she had a device and it had 5 points. On higher rank missions, your teammates have a higher possibility of dying. Meaning that you have a higher possibility of having to complete the mission by yourself. So during the Jounin exam, you had the option of complete the test on your own. Which Ikusa was. Ikusa had abandoned her suit a while back, having switched it for some other clothes. She said that she didn't want to wear the same damn thing as her idiot teammates. She was now wearing dark brown baggy pants and a black sleeveless shirt. Wearing black fingerless gloves and sandals as well. The only thing that really stood out was her having 2 large pouches instead of 1. She was apparently not only the medic Nin, but the leader of the group. So, basically, her other 2 teammates were fucked without her. Those sad, strange little men. Ikusa was quite grateful to them for allowing her to tag along. After all, she also would have been fucked without their help. Sasuke didn't like the idea, as Sakura took it as an opportunity to take to someone else, much to Naruto's happiness. Don't get him wrong, he had nothing against Sakura, no, he actually somewhat respected her. But, he could only take so much bitching, even though it was part of a Uzumaki's lifestyle. Seriously, it was. Okay, let's start from the beginning. The Uzumakis are one of the most powerful clans in Konoha. We know this, but what makes them powerful? It's, more or less, their training skills and ability to adapt to any situation. It's not a blood limit, but more of a hormone, artificially made, of course, that flows through their body, allowing them to figure out any and all ways to escape the situation. To be blunt, you could never catch a Uzumaki, alive anyway. But that's getting off point on why they put up with bitching on a daily basis. The truth is that the Uzumakis are mostly females, well they were until the clan was destroyed due to the Third War. Jiraiya was one of the few survivors of the clan, and was in all terms a pervert, so most females tried to stay away from him. Naruto still doesn't know how he managed to marry Tsunade, he really doesn't. It's very rare, for someone from the clan to have more males than females, so you can imagine everyone's surprise faces when Jiraiya ended up having 2 sons and only 1 daughter, adopting another son later on. Besides that, the Uzumakis didn't really specialize in anything really. They branched out into all aspects of the shinobi world. Taijutsu, ninjutsu, genjutsu, weapons, etc. They were geniuses that came up with some of most powerful skills in the world, some of which people could only dream of. The Rasengan, for example. Naruto himself rarely used the technique, since his father made it. It's not that he didn't care for him, it's just with how Naruto looked. If he were to take on a group of Leaf Nin and charge at them with the Rasengan, they would mostly likely think that he was the Yellow Flash. Seriously, that's how attached they were to him. He stood out like all of the Uzumaki males, one way or another. Naruto didn't want anyone to see him as his father, but for him and who he was. Which would be hard, considering that he would either be described as a hero or demon in this village, never something normal, never an average person. Life for Naruto sucked. Naruto sighed just thinking about it, before looking over at Ikusa. She was blushing, again. She had been for the past day or so for some reason. Every time she came close to Naruto she would blush furiously and keep somewhat quiet. He wondered why her attitude took a 180 turn from what she was the first time he met her, but he would find out eventually. Until then, he was going back to his mental world of ramen and monkeys. 3 grass Nin ran through the forest at high speeds towards their objective. The leader slightly out ahead of the rest. They had failed the first time, only managing to mark their prey, but not capture it. They all agreed that this would be the time that they succeeded in their goal. They didn't have much time left anyway. It was all or nothing. They would have succeeded last time, if not for that boy. Oh, how they hated that boy. He was dead now, yes, but he was the one that gave their target the power to overcome them, even if it was for only a small period of time. What he became is what puzzled them, since the boy seemed to have some primitive form of a blood limit that transformed him into that thing, but it didn't matter. As long as he was the last of them, they wouldn't have to worry. And if there were any, they would kill them. Irvine sneezed, as he rubbed his nose. He was busy looking for something to eat in the forest section of the area, trying to see if there was anything worth eating. Everyone stayed in the area that best fit them. Leaf in the forest, cloud and rock on the mountains, mist by the lake, etc. So, of course, his team was still in the forest section or zone. They had split up for a couple of hours to look for food, but were a bit reluctant to let him go. Why? He was considered the weakest. On one of the few occasions that Irvine ever did this, he snorted at the thought. Weakness or strength cannot be used in that way. Every person has a weakness and every person has a strength. They just happen to find their strength faster. That, and people consider a lot of the time that if you can't do what they can, then you're weak, regardless. Besides, thinking someone is weaker than you is arrogance, and thinking someone is stronger than you would have a lack of self-esteem. Or that's what he read out of a book once. He didn't believe a word it said. Anyway, back to the subject at hand. Irvine was currently moving through the forest, trying to find any food at all. He had been searching for 3 hours straight and found nothing that they could eat. He did kill a few oversized bugs, but Okami doesn't eat bugs since she uses them, and Hanabi doesn't eat bugs. In this place, it could cost you to be picky, but oh well. He at least found some giant tigers a while back and was able to get something off of them. They were annoying to kill, but well worth it. Irvine continued to search a little more until he found an interesting sight. A little weasel was caught in a bear trap. The weasel was white and, believe it or not, was wearing a small black vest. It had a little black bandage covering its left eye. Irvine wondered why it was wearing clothing but let it slide, figuring that it belonged to someone. Then why would it be out here? He walked towards the creature, as it continued to try and pull itself out of the trap. Irvine was careful not to make a noise, as he approached it. That was until he stepped on a twig, causing it to jerk its head towards him. They just stared at each other for a few seconds, before Irvine took another step. "Easy, I just want to help you out," Irvine stated, as he reached down towards the trap. After a minute or two of tinkering with the trap, he was able to free it. The creature scurried away from the trap as fast as possible and into a bush, while Irvine smiled as he watched it run away. Irvine turned around and was about to continue searching for food, when he heard a poof sound coming from behind. He looked back over at the bush to see a large puff of smoke coming from behind it. Irvine raised an eyebrow, as he walked over towards the bush and made his way through it. There wasn't a sign of the creature at all, while Irvine wondered what was going on. He took another step forward and stopped, noticing that he had stepped on something. Irvine looked down to see that it was a small yellow scroll with some words on it. He picked it up and began to read what was on it, his eyes widening when he finished. Summoning, contract. Kin-chan, are you done using the bathroom yet? Daso yelled out to Kin, who was continuing to stuff her face with chips from behind a few dozen trees. She said that she needed to be that far, because she wanted to have her privacy. Besides, no one wanted to piss her off. Hell no, that was the last thing that they wanted to do. They just decided to give her space so she could finish taking a crap. Kin had already been pissed off today when Daso tried to take a piss in front of her. He ended up getting sent through a tree. The good thing was that he already had bandages on his head, so they didn't have to stop to treat it. They had already wasted enough time as it is. It had been quite some time since they started the exam, and they had only gotten 3 points. They were being careful, deciding who to attack and who to leave alone. So, that limited them, instead of others who would just rush in and kill mindlessly, which were quite a few actually. Kin sighed, as she finished off a handful of chips and stuck the rest of the bag into her pouch for later. That guy Choji really was a genius. She had gotten to enjoy a lot of junk food because of the seal he put on the pouch. She now had hundreds of pounds of junk food stored in it, and she loved every aspect of the bag. She wondered if she would see Choji again, maybe he would have another humongous bag of chips that she could have. Kin drooled at the thought of it. Choji himself wasn't that bad, he seemed like a good guy, even with how large he was. He, for someone that she thought would also be mostly concerned with food, was a actually gentleman. Even though in Konoha that may not seem like much, but where she comes from, that would be a huge plus. Especially with how arrogant the people in her village were. Either way, if she really wanted to see him, then she could always just try and eat the last chip. 3 figures swept through the forest, as their shadows could be briefly seen on the ground. They were so close now, it had taken them a few days since the beginning to traverse the zones to find them, but it would soon be worth it. They would soon have the prize that they had been searching for, they would soon have the person that escaped them so long ago. They passed by several teams on the way to their target. Of course they had no interest in them, in what they came for. It started to annoy them when the other teams got in their way, even though they quickly disposed of them, it still slowed them down. They were running out of so much essential time, every second they needed. If they didn't get their target before their time limit was up, then they would lose it for quite some time. They need to get it before those things showed up. After that, it would all be lost. The figures continued to jump from branch to branch, as they soared through the tree tops at unimaginable speeds. They were close, they could feel it. A few minutes later they stopped on a large branch and looked down towards the ground. All 3 of them smiled. They had found their target, author. Read and review, Silent Terror, Nami. Author, nothing new. Booth Ghost, first off, I am an original man, believe it. Second, you're pretty much wrong about Hinata, let me explain. Hinata's personality itself is not plain, no, her personality in stories is controlled, determined, by the author. Since most authors prefer her original personality, or think she doesn't need a change in personality to continue the story, they don't bother with it. Let's see what I have given her. Pervert, outgoing, temperamental, sweet, kind, intelligent, rarely stutters, like once after the time skip, and even then she was asking Naruto if she could sleep with him. Powerful. Loyal. I think I've done a good job so far. Another thing, just because a OC is a original character doesn't mean they're original. You have heard of Mary Sue's, haven't you? If I were to create a girl for Naruto to fall in love with right now, she would be nothing but a Mary Sue, and it's unfair to the Naruto fans. There you go. Loaned, YEP. And weasels kick so much ass, there is a reason why Irvine has weasels as a summon, but that won't be told till later on. Anime, Boy 07, damn straight. Hope Master, read above comment. Lover 143, hell yeah, expect to see more Kinks Choji scenes. Midnight Angle of Darkness, hell yeah. Hybrid thing, well, I want it to be taken slowly. Other FICs would have them banging by now, but I want to show that they are forming a connection. I want people to see the connection between them, to have them watch it grow between the two. I've read only one other FIC that has done that, and sadly, it seems to have been abandoned. Section 72, your mental world is almost as twisted as mine, almost, prepare for a kick-ass battle scene this chapter. 00 Asian Writer 00, glad you liked it. Shinobika Jekitsun, yeah, I know. I always hate being reminded of that chapter. Dragon Eyes, haven't seen you in a while, what's up? The Itachi thing was genius. I know, along with a lot of crap I put in here. Disclaimer, I do not own Naruto. Enjoy the FIC. Silent Tear, Nami. They had found their target. Wait. Naruto said, as he stopped. The others looked at him confusedly. They had been forced to walk on the ground ever since the beginning, which pissed both Sakura and Sasuke off since they were such easy targets. The anger would raise to new heights if he tried to pull anything else. Asuka didn't really mind, she was just as laid back as Naruto. What is it, Naruto? Sakura said, as she sighed. Naruto looked around the trees, careful to scan each one closely. He checked every leaf and branch, every movement he noticed and mentally recorded. He could not afford to make a mistake. My spider senses are tingling. Whack. Okay, so maybe he could. As Naruto rubbed the back side of his head, he couldn't help but laugh. Sakura was powerful, but damn, that hit had knocked him to the ground. Before looking back at Sakura and Sasuke, who were glaring at him, Asuka just sighed, as she walked over to him. She offered her hand, as Naruto took it. Asuka pulled him up. Naruto's face then took a 160, as he looked at the tree behind them. You can come out. Naruto said, as Sakura looked at him like he was crazy. That was before she hit him, again. Naruto, this is no time to be playing. Who says he's playing? Came a voice, as all four of them turned to see who it was. Up in the trees were three people, all of them wearing gray robes, like Taiyuya's, only they were wearing pants, and straw hats. The first one had a type of mask on, which looked like a bunch of pieces of rock put together. The second one had most of their face covered in bandages, only his right eye visible. The finally one had white skin and snake-like eyes, he also had long black hair as well. Sasuke's eyes widened when he saw the finally one. You! Sasuke shouted, as his eyes shifted to a bright red color. 3 black pupils appeared in his eyes, his face clearly showing his rage. You're the one. His body started to glow, as black symbols appeared around his body, covering over half of him. That made me kill Zack. You mean the Michael Jackson wannabe? Naruto said, as everyone face faulted. The man in question quickly stood up, as he glared at Naruto with a burning passion. I am not like him, stated the man, as Naruto raised his hand to his face and began to count off his fingers. Oh really, I can give you 3 good reasons why you are. 1, you want to stay youthful forever. 2, you like to play with little boys. 3, your face has had just as much surgery done on it. Now if that isn't like him, I don't know what is. Oh, and Sasuke, even if that technique is powerful, it still won't work on him. Naruto said, as he turned around to see that Sasuke had brought his hands together, a blue energy sphere forming in his hands. Sasuke ignored him, as he began to charge at the man. Just when he was close to the tree that the man was on, he felt someone grab his wrist, as he was thrown into another tree. Surprisingly with enough force to knock him out. Naruto stared at Sasuke for a moment, before sighing and looking over Asuka and Sakura. Do you mind taking care of him? Naruto asked, or more like ordered. Both Sakura and Asuka had paled a bit when they saw what he did and quickly picked up Sasuke, running as fast as they could in the opposite direction. Naruto then turned back towards the 3 nin that had been watching the whole thing. Naruto smirked, as he stared at the one he had insulted earlier. Now, where were we, Orochimaru? Naruto asked, as Orochimaru just glared at him. I don't have time for this, Naruto, either get out of the way or I'll kill you. Orochimaru said, as Naruto just stared at him lazily. You can try, and fail, but I seriously doubt that you can kill me. Naruto stated, as he drew his katana. Orochimaru glared at him, as he looked at his teammates. I don't suppose you're willing to fight him? Orochimaru asked, as they shook their heads. He SSSS Enko SSS child, we're not fighting Enko SSS child. The one with the bandages said, as they both disappeared in a puff of smoke, their clothes falling to the ground. Orochimaru mumbled something, as he looked at Naruto. "I hate that bitch. You know you shouldn't hate so much, it could give you a lot of wrinkles. Besides, she was your daughter after all," Naruto said, as Orochimaru started to form some seals. Katan Ryuka no Jutsu, Orochimaru said, as he breathed a huge stream of fire at Naruto. It engulfed the entire area, as the fire spread rapidly. Orochimaru waited for a few seconds, before he heard someone call out something. Hakusho Kaiten was heard as the flames moved outwards, revealing a blue spinning sphere. Small flames were still burning around it, as it continued to spin for another minute. When it stopped, Naruto was pierced from behind by a sword. He looked back to see Orochimaru grinning and smirked when he saw his confused expression. An explosion ripped through the forest, as Naruto's Kage Bunshin exploded. Naruto watched all of this from the safety of a tree branch that was nearby. A few seconds later, he quickly turned around and jumped towards another tree, dodging the kill that was aimed to decapitate him. Orochimaru landed on the ground, as Naruto formed some seals and jumped to another tree. Katan Housenka no Jutsu, he said, as he rapidly shot multiple fireballs from his mouth at Orochimaru. Orochimaru ran to the left, dodging the fur's balls as he went. He started formed seals of his own. Katan Ryuka no Jutsu. Orochimaru once again shot a huge stream of furs at Naruto, who landed on a tree and jumped to another one, dodging the fire blast. Naruto put his hand into a single seal. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Naruto said, as single clone was formed. The clone then formed a seal as well. Henge, the clone said, as he turned into a giant shuriken. The real Naruto grabbed the shuriken and threw it at Orochimaru. Orochimaru just side-stepped the shuriken, as it flew by him. The shuriken continued to fly through the air, now just hovering about the ground. The clone transformed back into its original form and threw a wave of needles at Orochimaru. Orochimaru just knocked the needles away with his sword, making sure to knock one back at the clone, causing it to puff out FO existence. A few seconds later, Orochimaru jumped into the air, as Naruto bursted out of the ground and tried to slash him. Orochimaru back-flipped and stabbed his sword into Naruto's head. "Stopping stalling and attack me," Orochimaru yelled, as the Kage Bunshin Naruto disappeared in a puff of smoke. "I'm not stalling, I'm multitasking." Orochimaru's eyes widened, as he turned around to see Naruto some distance away, his hands formed into a seal. Right next to him was a dragon's head made out of stone. Its eyes glowed, as Orochimaru paled. Oh shit. A few miles away, both Sakura and Asuka were watching the battle between the two. How you ask? Well, with some chakra focused in the ears and eyes, anything's possible. Right next to them was Sasuke, who was still out cold. Asuka looked over at Sakura. "He multitasks?" Asuka asked, as Sakura nodded. "Yep, he does." "Really?" "Yeah, he can talk to you and piss you off at the same time," Sakura added, as Asuka's sweat dropped. "That's multitasking? You'd be amazed with the results." Fukyu Doragon Furia no Jutsu, Naruto said, as the stone dragon's eyes glowed red. A few seconds later, a thick, fiery liquid shot out of its mouth and straight at Orochimaru. He jumped up into the trees, as the liquid hit the ground. The ground actually began to dissolve a bit, as fires burned brightly from on top of the liquid. The dragon readjusted its head to face Orochimaru, as it shot another blast of liquid at him. Orochimaru dodged it, as the liquid hit the tree. The tree itself almost instantly dissolved to nothing, as the remains of the tree fell to the ground. Naruto then jumped into the air and drew his katana, the stone dragon crumbling into a pile of rocks. Naruto hit Orochimaru in mid-air, sending him into a tree. Naruto followed him, and before Orochimaru could move from his spot on the tree, Naruto pressed his sword against his throat. Naruto sighed, as Orochimaru turned into a pile of mud. He then turned around to see Orochimaru standing on a tree branch, watching him with amusement. Maybe we should stop fooling around now? Orochimaru asked, as Naruto just glared at him. Maybe you're right, but I still don't need to go full power to beat you. Naruto said, as he slowly formed his hands into a unique seal. He then started to gather his chakra, as blue electricity began to form around him. Naruto closed his eyes, as his body started to glow blue. The electricity started to flare around more rapidly, as his clothes flowed/waved at a high speed. A second later, Naruto's eyes shot open. 40%. Naruto shouted, as he gave a loud roar. His body was surging with energy, every fiber of his being was being rearranged. Every molecule changing to hold his new power. A blue light shined from Naruto, as the energy caused shock waves. Orochimaru shielded his eyes, as the light from Naruto intensified. A minute later, it dimmed, as Orochimaru looked to see what had happened. Naruto's clothes had changed, he was now wearing an aqua blue jacket and gray waterproof pants. The pants were tucked away into two large black combat boots, while the jacket's large hoodie covered all of the upper face of Naruto, leaving only his checks and whisker marks visible. The jacket was buttoned up, while two chains criss-crossed around his chest, forming an X. The jacket's sleeves were long and hiding his hands quite well. The most noticeable features about him were the fox ears on his head and the two tails swinging behind him. The two just stood there for a moment, before Naruto reached behind him while one of the tails began to take the shape of a ball. A second later Naruto threw the ball into the air. Sabi Erasure. Naruto said, as the sky flashed for a moment, before it began to rain heavily. Naruto reached behind him again, as the second tail also formed into a ball. He then extended his arm out, while it began to take shape. Sabi Non. Naruto said, as the watery sphere extended outwards, taking the shape of a sword. Naruto just stood there for a moment, before jumping towards the left. Orochimaru wondered what he was doing, only to be shocked when Naruto landed sideways in mid-air and jumped to the right, heading towards him in a zigzag pattern. Orochimaru jumped back to avoid Naruto's sword. When he landed, Orochimaru back-flipped to avoid a slash that was aimed low and spun in the air to dodge another slash. Landing on his feet again, Orochimaru dodged another slash by jumping backwards, forming seals as he went. Tasa Hazaki no Jutsu. Orochimaru said, as he brought his hands together and shot a blue blot of lightning at Naruto. Naruto's eyes widened, as the lightning struck. A second later he bursted into a couple hundred drops of water. Orochimaru quickly sunk into the ground, barely missing the slash from Naruto's sword. Naruto closed his eyes for a minute, opening them again to see several dozen clones surrounding him. He began to form some seals. Sahim. Naruto said, as water began to gather above him in a giant sphere-like shape. The clones charged at him with their swords drawn. Just as they were about to reach him, the water sphere finished and fell to the ground. When the drop hit the ground, a huge burst of water shot up into the sky, as several smaller versions of the drop rained down. When they hit the clones, Naruto heard the sound someone makes when they're being crushed. Naruto turned around to face Orochimaru, who was standing a couple feet away from him. A beeping sound was heard, as Orochimaru checked his wristband. With a tired sigh, he lowered his hand and looked at Naruto. It seems my time is up, I'll have to deal with you another time. Orochimaru snapped his fingers, as 4 clones bursted out of the ground, their hands forming seals. Kitai Ashuku no Jutsu, they said at once, as a huge boulder shot out of the ground and directly at Naruto. Naruto simply moved out of the way, wondering why he used something she could dodge so easily. His eyes widened, as he looked back to see that Sakura and Asuka were directly behind him. Shit! Naruto thought, as the boulder surprisingly blazed through the trees at high speeds. Sakura was in front of Asuka, who was right next to Sasuke. Naruto watched, as the boulder was about to hit them when something happened. The boulder had split in half, as the pieces rolled in different directions. "Man, this is troublesome. Are you alright?" the man asked, as he turned to face Sakura. Of course she didn't hear him, considering that she was too busy staring at him, hearts in her eyes. Standing before her was a man around the height of 5 feet 9 inches, and he was around the age of 16, he also had long black hair. He wore baggy gray pants and a large green jacket, a net shirt underneath. It was showing his muscles all too well. He had a sheath strapped to his belt and was wearing sandals. Sakura was practically drooling. Naruto sighed in relief at the sight of the new arrival, as he turned back to where Orochimaru was. Naruto cursed to himself, as he looked at the now empty spot. He would have to deal with that guy again sooner or later, whether he liked it or not. "Author, I've got a nice offer for you guys. How would you like me to, instead of waiting till Saturday, post the stories when I finish them? I have like 8 or 9 chapters held back. Tell me in your reviews since I don't read my mail much. What had happened, what they lost. Author, read the bottom of the chapter for an important message. Belan, eventually, they will only come out once a week though, since I have 2 other stories going. Section 72, Traitor, know what I do with traitors? Give them cookies because they have joined the dark side of the Force, thanks for reviewing. Mima 57775, 0.0, glad you liked it. Boo the Ghost, I'm good at making points, thanks for reviewing. Drops, Ops, oh well. I'll just call him that from now on XD. Lunark Shinobi, thanks for reviewing. Duran the Warrior, yep, Itachi will appear eventually. Dragonzis, WOAH. Hold it. To many questions. First, the color changes with the element, fired, blue water. Second, Nami is that name of the tale and form he took, like the first one before it. Yes, he is Naruto's other grandfather. Yes, Sasuke knows Rasengan, Chidori went to another. Naruto, well, you'll find out eventually. What happened to the Sandaime will be put in the story eventually. Read the chapter to find out if it is him. Damn, that was long. Lover 143, no. Orochimaru actually got laid, believe it or not, twice. This is a Naruto's Hinata FIC. Read the chapter to find out. Anime, Boy 07, still thinking about that. Kenji Inaku. I thought so too, the Hinata and Naruto thing. Don't worry, insane people are accepted here. Midnight Angle of Darkness, no, I just didn't have a catchy reply to it, read above post for crazy people. 00 Asian Writer 00, thanks for reviewing. Sand Goddess, thanks for reviewing. Drake 0x, yes SIR. Disclaimer, I do not own Naruto, enjoy the FIC. What had happened, what they lost. Sasuke was sweating at an unimaginable rate, his head turning every so often. His entire body shook, as the curse mark on his neck glowed slightly. He was burning up by most human standards, while the rag that was on his head fell off again. Sakura sighed, as she once again placed it on his forehead, wondering to herself what he could be dreaming of. You really shouldn't do that. A boy said, as he walked over to Sakura, who was busy cooking some rabbits that they had caught earlier. Sasuke looked over at the boy, who had taken over for Sakura, who had almost burned herself. He was 12 years old and had wavy red hair that kinda stuck upwards a bit. He wasn't all that tall, only around 5 feet 3 inches at best. He was wearing dark blue pants and a black cloak similar to that of a puppet's. Sasuke watched them work with little interest. The boy looked over at Sasuke, who was just staring at them. You know, you could help too. We are cooking everyone's lunch after all. The boy said, as he glared at Sasuke. Sasuke just looked at the fish, then at Sakura, and finally back at the boy. Only one thing he could say really. The fish are burning. The boy looked at him confusedly, before looking back at the fish. His eyes widened, as he quickly tried to save the fish from being burnt to a crisp, rhyming, "ya." Sakura helped the boy out, as they had little success. Only 2 fish were left, and without a second of hesitation, he picked up a fish and threw it at Sasuke, who easily caught it. He then looked over at Sakura and tossed her the other fish. "Eat up." Sakura eyed the fish for a moment, before looking back at the boy. "But what about dash dot?" "I'll be fine," the boy said, as he looked at Sasuke, who was also staring at him with raised eyebrows. "I had an apple an hour ago, so I'll be tied off for a while," the boy said, as he looked over at Sakura. "So don't worry about it." Sakura smiled. "Thank you, Zack. I've got a lovely bunch of coconuts da-da-da-da. And here they are, standing in a row, dum-dum, take one, small one, see if it's as big as your dash dot." "Enough!" Sasuke yelled, as he looked over at Zack, who had stopped singing and looked over at him. Sakura also looked over at him, silently thanking him along with Kami-sama. "Can you please sing something else for a change?" Sasuke asked, as Zack pouted. "Why? I like that song," Zack said, as a vein was now visible on Sasuke's head. "Because you've been singing the same damn song for the past 3 hours," Sasuke said, as Zack just stared at him, before laughing. "You need to lighten up. Sure, we're in a huge forest full of things that wouldn't hesitate to kill us, but come on dash dot." Zack's face instantly hardened, along with Sasuke's. Both of them immediately were in front of Sakura, deflecting a huge wave of kunai that were being sent down from the trees. When the wave stopped, both Sasuke and Zack prepared their weapons. Sasuke having 2 katana in his hands and Zack having a katana and 4 kunai in his right hand, a folded-up windmill shuriken in his left. A figure dropped down from the trees, as both Sasuke and Zack examined him. The figure looked to be male and around 6 feet tall. He was wearing a gray robe, along with a gray pair of pants. He was also wearing a straw hat, which covered his long black hair. Both of their eyes narrowed, as the Nin licked his lips. "Yes, you'll both do just fine," the figure said, as he jumped to the ground, easily and gracefully landing on his feet. "Tell me, do you have a dream, a goal?" the man asked, as Zack and Sakura looked at him with a raised eyebrow. Sasuke, on the other hand, was starting to have interest. "Yes," Sasuke said, as Zack looked at him funny, before turning back towards the Nin, his eyes narrowing. "And what if we do?" Zack asked, as the figure smiled. "What if I told you that I could give you that power?" the figure said, as he began to walk over to them. "Think about it, the ability to finally accomplish your goals, or dreams," the man looked over at Sasuke with a grin. "To be able to put all of your suffering to rest." Sasuke started to shake a bit, as Zack just continued to glare at the man. "I'd say you're full of bullshit," Zack said, as he raised his weapons, ready to strike at any moment. The man just kept his grin. "What if I could show you that power?" The man started to form some seals, as he hit the ground a second later. "Kuchi-os no jutsu," the man said, as a large cloud of smoke rushed through the area. Both Sasuke and Zack stayed alert, as the smoke finally cleared to reveal, sheep? Yes, standing in front of them were sheep, a whole herd of them. They had little collars on them, which had little black bells swinging slightly. The sheep just stood there, as the figure looked down at them. "Take it from the top." The sheep started to glow white, as their bells glowed black. A few seconds later, Zack, Sakura and Sasuke grabbed their eyes in pain, as the sheep began to sing a choirs of sounds. They screamed in pain, as Zack looked over at the figure, his eyes were closed and his face pulled into a smile. Zack heard a scream from behind him, as he looked over to see that Sakura had a grayish aura around her. She began to scream, as her eyes turned completely white and letters started to appear on her head. He then looked over at Sasuke, who was grabbing his eyes in pain, scratching at them with all his might. Smoke could be seen coming out of his eyes, as his screaming slowly came to a stop. Sasuke stopped scratching, as he moved his head upwards. His eyes shot open. The Mangekyo Sharingan. Zack though, as he looked over at the figure. The figure himself had changed a lot. His skin had turned pitch black, as two huge-ass leathery wings shut out of his back. His teeth had grown into fangs, while his fingers started to become as sharp as claws. His yellow-slitted eyes stared down at him with interest. Zack looked at himself to see that he was glowing green slightly, before it died down. Interesting. It seems that you're going to need another blast to awaken yours, the figure said, as he looked over at the sheep, who were still standing their original spot. Take it from the top. The sheep once again began to glow, as the horrid choirs once again played. The small green aura that was once around Zack grew at extreme rates. Pain fulling through his body, as every point in his body felt like it was being ripped apart. His screams were heard throughout the forest. Sasuke's eyes widened at what he was seeing. He didn't think anything like this was possible, but he still couldn't believe it. It had to be his eyes, they must be playing tricks on him. That's it, they must be playing tricks. He continued to think that, until Zack's blood hit him in the face. Warning, from this point forward this chapter will be labeled as M rating for gruesome scenes and destruction of the body. Please note that if you continue from this point that it is of your own choice and I am not held eligible for your actions. You have been warned. Zack's screams were heard, as bulges started to appear on his arm. Slowly, the skin was pushed aside, as bones started to push upwards. His fingers, and thumb, started to get larger one section at a time, until the tips of the fingers opened and bones started to push out. Zack now having claws made out of bones and his arms with spikes sticking out of them, it all covered with blood. Zack's process began once again on his thighs and feet, only another bone shot out of his heel. Zack's eyes widened, as he bended forwards, him grabbing his sides. Seconds later, spikes slowly sprouted from his back, leaving a trail of blood flowing down his back. When it was finished he had 4 huge spikes sticking out of his back. The figure raised an eyebrow. Interesting indeed. The figure said, as he looked at the sheep. Retreat. The herd of sheep disappear, as the figure once again starts to walk towards them. His smile turned into a smirk. This is the kind of power I can give you, all you have to do is take it. The man stopped when he was right in front of Sasuke and, surprisingly, his head shot up, while his neck took the form of a snake's. His head dived down, and bit Sasuke on the neck. A purple mark appeared on his neck, as the figure pulled away. Now Sasuke, I'll be waiting for you to calm it. The figure stopped, as he was hit hard from the side. Spinning in the air, the figure spun and landed on all 4, looking at who his assailant was. Zack grunted in pain, as he pulled his arm back. He thrusted in forward, and surprisingly, the hand shot open, as all of the skin on the arm shot off in different directions, it being connected to a long flexible bone-looking object, mouthful. The figure dodged the object, but grabbed his sides in pain. That one hit had done a lot of damage to him. A few more, and he would be done for good. Zack pulled his hand back, as he got on all 4 and started to rush towards the figure. Just as he was about to reach him, Zack jumped a spun in the air. The figure dodged, barely missing the 4 spikes on Zack's back. Zack landed on all 4, as he quickly spun and tried to deliver a kick to the figure. The figure jumped into the air, as Zack shot his hand at the man, striking him dead on. The figure was flung into the trees, breaking through several until he finally stopped. The figure slowly stood up, as he began to limp away. 2 hits were all that creature needed to take him down. The figure cursed himself for not marking him first, but at least he managed to get his original target. The figure continued to limp away until he felt the ground shake. The figure's eyes widened, as he quickly formed some seals and disappeared into the ground. Zack jumped down from the trees, as he began to smell the area. Zack thought for a moment, before he stabbed his hand into the ground. He reached up, as he pulled the figure out of the ground and threw him at a couple of fallen trees. The figure gasped, as he looked down to see a large branch sticking through his gut. Zack watched him for a moment, before letting out a roar in anger when the figure turned to mud, knowing that he had gotten away. Sasuke sighed, as he felt his eyes go back to normal. He had just obtained the ultimate form of the Sharingan, and he had just lost it as well. It was heartbreaking to say the least. He had the power that his brother had processed, the power that wiped out his clan. He had to have it again. It was the only way that he could defeat his brother, defeat the man that took away everything he had. Sasuke looked over at Sakura, who was sound asleep. Ever since the power effects had worn off, her inner Sakura went back into the depths of their mind. She yelled a lot, that's what Sasuke could tell, and the fact that her strength was fold that of Sakura. The power increase had knocked her out. Sasuke started to stand up. He was sitting on the ground, as he looked over at Sakura. He was about to leave, hoping that he could find the power that he had experienced. That was until he deflected what looked like an arm with his katana. Sasuke looked over to see Zack staring at him. Zack roared, as he began to run towards Sasuke. He stopped just when he was about to reach Sasuke, jumping backwards and using his momentum to shot forward. Sasuke dodged his kick, but was taken by surprise when he turned around while being upside down in mid-air and hit him with one of his arms. Sasuke brought his katana up to block it, but the sheer power of the attack sent him into some nearby trees. Zack grunted, as he looked around the area. His eyes stopped at the sight of Sakura. Zack somewhat grinned, as he began to walk towards her, him licking his lips. He stopped right in front of her and reached downwards with one of his claws. Just as he was about to grab her, he heard a loud noise coming from Sasuke's direction. He turned around quick enough to get hit by a rather destructive attack. Zack looked down to see visible blue chakra moving around like static electricity. He heard the sound of the chirping of 1,000 birds. Chidori. Sasuke whispered, as he pushed his hand further in. When he pulled it out a couple of seconds later, Zack dropped to his knees. A bright green light engulfed him. As his body turned back to normal, Zack looked up at Sasuke. "Please, don't tell Irvine." With that, his body dropped to the ground. Sasuke's head dropped for a moment, he seemingly lost in his thoughts. With a large sigh he looked over at Sakura, who was still asleep. Sasuke stood up and walked over to her, picking her up and moving her a couple feet away from where Zack was, before looking back at him. He was being torn from the inside, emotionally anyway. Sakura slowly opened her eyes, wondering why she could smell something burning. Her eyes started to focus, as she looked at the sight before her. Sasuke was standing before a huge fire. It burning swiftly and easily. Sasuke looked absent-minded, as he watched the flames burn. Sakura stood up and started to walk towards him. "Sasuke-kun." Sasuke looked over at her and scanned her for a moment, before throwing a scroll at her. Sakura caught it, as she looked up at Sasuke with confusion in her eyes. "It's for Irvine, from Zack," Sasuke said, as Sakura looked down at the scroll. "Can't he give it to Irvine himself?" Sakura asked, as she looked up at Sasuke, whose head had dropped slightly. "He can't," Sasuke said, as he stared into the flames. Sakura didn't understand, until she looked into the flames as well, before her eyes widened at what was being burned. "It can't. It is," Sasuke said, as Sakura began to feel tears welled up in her eyes. She dropped to the ground as she silently cried. Sasuke just continued to stare into the flames, intent on seeing this through to the end, and learning something that day. He now had two enemies. Sasuke continued to turn in his sleep as he was hunted by what had happened that day. The worst part about it was that even with all the training he had did with that Sannin, even after all those long hours of suffering through hellish routines that would make any person want to quit just after a few days, even after swearing an oath to revenge, he had missed his chance, and it was all thanks to him. Naruto. Got another thing for you guys, the Naruto RP forum I go to, we have only 20 people, so I was wondering if would like to join it. I go to it a lot. Go to my profile for the link. By the way, my character has the phrase, "I am the unknown commander" under where the avatar should be. Have fun searching for me. Just remember, a lot of the characters have already been taken. So you may need to create a new character. PM Sasuke, the administrator, for details. Down our separate paths, all with the SA. Author, sorry that it's late, but I had a few things to take care of. I come bearing good news though. First is the all-new Naruto manga series, one that would show what happened if Sasuke came back, if Hinata and Naruto dated, what Sakura's and Sasuke's kid would look like. So yeah, it's awesome. Another thing is the special chapter I've been working on for those Final Fantasy fans. It's somewhere in the 30s chapter-wise, you're going to love it. On to the reviews. Kajirinai Wanryoku, author smacks his own forehead. Okay, let me explain. What I meant was that the Chidori was learned by Sasuke, and for obvious reasons Naruto. But the Chidori was taught to another person, one most people wouldn't expect. This is what happens when I sum shit up in one long-ass paragraph XD. Section 72, yeah, it was meant to give people a better look at what had happened beforehand, makes it easier to understand the story. Lover 143, yep, surprised me too, just to tell you, you shouldn't end every post with peace out on the board, people would get annoyed quite easily if you did. Just to tell you. Sunny. I'm sorry, I've been waiting 4 or 5 days to do that. Dragon Eyes, in a nutshell, yeah. 00 Asian Writer 00